over the world. Other mice are wiped out by disease or starvation. If you collected all the mice that die in one day in New York City, they would weigh 8,000 pounds. If you stacked up an equivalent amount of dead humans or even mangy dogs, it would be considered an atrocity. It seems no one has any respect for the mouse. But then, why should they? The plankton of mammals. They breed rapidly. They all look identical, and they once spread the plague. No one weeps for the mouse, for its life is worth less than zero. Just another cold fact of life on this horrifying planet.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to join the discussion. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria, and I will be joined very shortly by Chris, who does the show with me on Monday nights. He just, as he sometimes does, he's running a little bit late, but he's on his way. All of that's fine, and he'll be here momentarily. Unfortunately, the Free Talk Live clock does not always cooperate with the lifestyles that the hosts lead, and sometimes people end up being late. It happens. I've got awesome stories I want to talk about, though, including one unusual one where a ransomware attack in Indonesia, and I don't like using the term attack to describe these because most of them are more like exposing people's vulnerabilities when they make stupid mistakes online. And I guess that's more like an entrapment than an actual attack. But they apologize to the Indonesian government after having hit their systems with ransomware and, just sort of crippled them. Also, but more importantly, the largest password leak in history has occurred, which means I think it's about 8 billion total passwords that have been compromised. And I couldn't find a list of websites that were involved here or common services, but with 8 billion or so passwords being vulnerable at this point, it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and change your password with all of these websites. Now, it's actually not a new hack. It's a new compilation of old password hacks, including the previous largest database of hacked passwords in history. And this is now the largest, but it's the largest by including the old largest one, as well as several new ones that have happened since then. That's coming up, and it's very important to keep yourself secure, keep yourself safe by changing your password, using something secure, using something safe. But I want to talk about Joe Biden because this guy provides infinite amusement to me because he was unqualified to be president in 2020. And legally, yes, he's qualified. Everyone's qualified to be president. Being a felon, much to people's dismay, does not disqualify you from being president. You only have to, 1, be an American citizen, and 2, or be born an American citizen, rather, and 2, be over the age of 35, which includes most of the United States. And I think that second restriction should be taken out. I think that if you run for president and you're able to garner their support, then your age should be irrelevant. And I understand what the people who came up with the system were thinking, that people become more mature at the age of 35 than they are at the age of 18 or whatever. But if you're going to allow these people, if your laws are going to apply to people under the age of 35, then they should have the ability to get in there and change those laws. And there's no one really more suited to do that than the president of the United States, who can, in fact, veto legislation. So realistically, all you really need to do is be the age of 35, and it's probably going to take you that long to amass that sort of political capital to even begin to run for office. But you have to be over the age of 35, and you have to be born an American citizen. And Joe Biden definitely meets those qualifications. However, if you go to joebiden.info, that's joebiden.info, I assume that website still exists. I have not looked at it since I got out of federal prison, but I assume it's still there. There's all sorts of clips there and pictures and videos that make it very clear that Joe Biden should probably not be in a position of power. This is an old man who doesn't seem to know where he is most of the time. He has a weird fondness for children, especially little girls. And I'm not saying he's a pedophile. I'm not. But I'm saying he has a weird fondness for little girls. And he likes sniffing them and just caressing them in strange ways that clearly make them uncomfortable. Just all sorts of creepy old man behavior from Joe Biden, on top of the fact that he's not really coherent when he attempts to speak. And he sort of goes in and out, where I'm assuming that his handlers, the powers that, and I don't mean to suggest the powers that be is this elite cabal of people standing behind him who drug him to make him relatively lucid so that he can carry on conversations and give speeches. I just mean the president, as we all know, has handlers. There are people around him whose job it is to make sure he gets up there and he gives a good speech and he doesn't say something stupid. I've been assuming that these people are dosing him with some sort of medication, probably methamphetamine. But I don't know that for sure. Obviously, I don't know that for sure. And I don't know that methamphetamine would even do that. But you can see it sort of wear off during the debate and at other moments where he just sort of loses his train of thought, completely forgets what he's saying, or he just babbles on incoherently. This has caused a large number of Democrats to call for the stepping aside of Joe Biden from the 2024 presidential race, where apparently he won the Democratic national nomination already. I've got an article here from the New York Times about this that I want to get into. Plus, I have some really amusing clips of Joe Biden. These are all pre-2024 as well. So, and the reason I did that, because these people are acting like this confusion from Joe Biden, this strangeness from him is new. And like, oh, well, if he had been like this 4 years ago, we would have never made him president. No, he's been like this the entire time. You guys just ignored it 4 years ago when we told you that this seemed to be a senile old man and you were making him your presidential candidate. And that was a bit scary to those of us who don't want to have a president who is a senile old man. So this article from the New York Times begins, mark my words, Joe Biden is going to be out of the 2024 presidential race, whether he is ready to admit it or not. His pleas on Monday to congressional Democrats for support will not unite the party behind him. And I had heard on Twitter mostly that there were a large number of Democrats calling for Joe Biden to step aside and give the nomination to someone else. Now, obviously, that's not really the way it works. Now, in the presidential system, if he was the president at the time and he retired and said, I can't do this anymore, or became incapable of completing the job, Kamala Harris would then become the president. But given that he hasn't been elected in 2024, and I don't think she's been picked as his vice presidential candidate for 2024, but I haven't followed it very closely, she's still not certain to get the presidential nomination. And I don't know if Democrats have the time at this point to redo the entire thing. Maybe they'll just go with Hillary Clinton. I don't particularly want to see that, but she's got to be better, at least more lucid than Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden has been entertaining when he starts talking about children stroking his leg hair and when he just sets Donald Trump up just to annihilate him in the debates. It has been entertaining. And I guess that's a little bit safer than having a lunatic like George W. Bush with his finger on the button. Because George W. Bush, of course, is a fundamentalist Christian who believes that the world should be ended. And this is a terrifying thing for a president to believe. And this has been the case for decades going off and on. Now, Barack Obama didn't seem to be a fundamentalist Christian, but it's very common that we have fundamentalist Christians who become the president of the United States. And they genuinely want the world to come to an end. And they want to do things that will usher in the end of the world as we know it, because they believe that at that time, Jesus will come back. And that's the number one thing that these fundamentalist Christians want, is for Jesus to return. And therefore, the Christian duty for a president who happens to believe that is to do what they can to usher in the end of the world. And that's a terrifying prospect. Now, Donald Trump doesn't seem to be that, and Joe Biden doesn't seem to be that, but still, I'm not convinced I want any of them to have their finger on the button even going forward. Now, I realize that Donald Trump has already been president and Joe Biden has already been president, and neither one of them have so far set off a nuclear apocalypse. And to their credit, that's a good thing. But that's a very low bar for being president and for being qualified to be president and for being a good president, is not blowing up Western society. Mr. Biden, of course, says he's staying in the race, but it's only a matter of time before Democratic pressure and public and private polling lead him to exit the race. The jig is up, and the sooner Biden and Democratic leaders accept this, the better. We need to move forward. Now, this guy repeatedly refers to him as Mr. Biden. I'm not going to do that because I don't think Biden would refer to me as Miss DeMezzo, and I don't think he would refer to this author as Mr. whatever either. But it can't be by anointing Vice President Kamala Harris or anyone else as the presumptive Democratic nominee. We've got to do it out in the open, the exact opposite of what Donald Trump wants us to do. And I'm sure the Democrats have some sort of crazy Robert Rules of Order process for sorting out exactly this contingency. Like, what do they do? Maybe you out there know, 603-283-6160. What do the Democrats do when the person they nominated, who, by the way, this is the same Joe Biden that you had 6 months ago. It seems to me like you're just dealing with buyer's remorse at this point, but you should have known by now exactly what you were getting when you made Joe Biden your nominee. He's been like this since at least 2020, and honestly, going back further than that, we've got some clips here to prove this. For the first time in his life, Mr. Trump is praying, I don't know how true that is or isn't, to win the White House and increase his chances of avoiding an orange jumpsuit. He needs Democrats to make the wrong moves in the coming days, namely to appear to rig the nomination for a fading president or the sitting vice president or some other heir apparent. He needs to be able to type all caps posts about power brokers and big donors putting the fix in. He needs, in other words, for Democrats to blow it. I'm not sure, again, that they really have any other option. They would have to completely redo a lot of these primaries that have already happened, and a lot of these primaries Joe Biden has already won. And I'd believe that most Democrats would, for expedience sake only, send their support behind Kamala Harris. I could be wrong, but that's the easiest thing for them to do. It's the fastest, simplest thing. But he insists we're not going to do that. We're going to nominate a new ticket in a highly democratic and novel way, not in the back rooms of Washington, D.C. or Chicago. And I don't believe any of that to be true. A new ticket in a highly democratic, well, the Democrats don't do things in a democratic sort of way. They do things in the way of an oligarchy because they have these things called super delegates. And I'm really confused now about how this whole process works, because I think it was 2016 when the superdelegates nonsense came into the public zeitgeist, because Bernie Sanders was running against Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders had a lot of popular support, but he had no superdelegates. And for some reason within the Democratic Party system, the superdelegates are more or less the only things that matter. And because Hillary Clinton, who was widely disliked by everyone with a pulse except these superdelegates, had the support of these superdelegates, she ended up receiving the Democratic Party's nomination in 2016, whereupon she, of course, lost to Donald Trump, and he ended up becoming president. This guy says we're at the stage where we need constructive ideas for how to move forward. No, dude, you're past the idea stage. Like, the election is in less than 3 months, and I'm sorry that this has happened, kind of. I actually don't really have any sympathy for your situation whatsoever. But, you know, it's a nice thing to say. I'm sorry that this has happened, but the time for constructive ideas on how to move forward has passed. This is the time when signs are getting printed and campaigns are going into hardcore spending mode in order to get their candidate elected. And your candidate doesn't even seem to exist outside of Joe Biden. At this point, you're either stuck with Joe Biden, or you're going to have to scramble within the next few weeks to come up with a replacement that people will find somewhat more palatable. Representative Jim Clyburn and the Times opinion columnist Ezra Klein have spoken about a Democratic mini primary, and I want to build on that. I want to see the Democratic Party hold 4 historic town halls because, 4 out of 50 states having town halls is democratic somehow between now and the Democratic National Convention in August. So apparently that's good news. The Democrats have not actually had the Democratic National Convention, which at least does give them time to come up with a candidate who is not Joe Biden and to actually make that candidate known to the people and make it not look like it was completely and totally rigged in the favor of whoever this new candidate happens to be. I was under the impression that these things happened in June or May, and I guess that's because the Libertarian Party already had their national convention. However, he goes on, we can recruit the 2 most obvious and qualified people in the world to facilitate substantive discussions, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. So his solution is to get Barack Obama and Bill Clinton to come into the Democratic National Convention, and they're going to prove that the new presidential candidate they come up with is not rigged in any sort of way. Now, these are probably the 2 worst people I can imagine to do this. They might as well get Barack Obama, Bill, and Hillary Clinton to get up there because I wouldn't trust anything any of those 3 people said. If they came out and said, yes, we came up with a new process, you're going to love it, it's going to give us a new presidential candidate who's not pooping himself over there in the corner confused about where he is, and you're going to be very happy about it, I would assume that those 3 people had stood in a back room somewhere smoking cigars, coming up with a plan to screw you over. And that because that's Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton. They may not represent every faction under our party's Big Tent. So that whole, we're going to come up with this new super democratic process thing, he's already throwing that idea out. We're not even 4 paragraphs into this article of him wanting to replace Joe Biden with a new presidential candidate. And he's already throwing out the democratic principles that he espoused at the very beginning, where he said, let me see if I can find it again. We're going to nominate a new ticket in a highly democratic and novel way, not in the back rooms of Washington, D.C. or Chicago. That's a literal quote from the article. 3 paragraphs later, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton may not represent every faction under our party's Big Tent. So he's already throwing out the democracy, throwing out the new novel way. He's bringing in the old guard to come in and fix the problem. And the problem is that Joe Biden simply, he's going to lose to Donald Trump at this point. And I don't know that he has any way of not doing that. The debate proved to me that all Donald Trump has to do is come out there and not look crazy, and he wins the debate. I am joined now by Chris. Welcome. I think you are unmuted.
I have no idea, but I guess we're going to find out.
So welcome. I've got a bunch of clips here about Joe Biden. Well, they're not clips about Joe Biden. They're clips of Joe Biden saying crazy things because the Democrats are freaking out about their candidate and saying that he needs to be replaced, he needs to step aside, and exactly what you would expect. But they've already had most of their primaries, and Joe Biden has already won them. And I don't understand why they're surprised by any of this, right? This is the same Joe Biden that we had 4 years ago. He was still saying crazy nonsense then, and he's still saying crazy nonsense now. So why is it that they can't support him, even though they could back then? I don't understand. And this guy, of course, he wants to come up with this novel democratic way that chooses a new candidate, but he wants to have 4 town halls that will do so. Now, this is including everyone in these 4 town halls. So he's already completely abandoned any principles that he had when he started. High stakes job interviews for the toughest job in the world, which surely attract television and cable partners and generate record numbers of viewers. I don't think that's true at all, man. I don't know about the average person out there because I have zero interest in politics realistically, except to make fun of it like this. But I can't imagine you're going to, oh my dear God, he says, think the Super Bowl with Taylor Swift in the stands. This guy really thinks.
Now I'm really curious what the Super Bowl numbers are relative to the presidential debate.
I'm curious as well. I will look that up because we're going to break shortly. I will look that up during the break, but it can't possibly be a contest. The Super Bowl with Taylor Swift in the stands, watched
I
by
have no idea.
like I think half of all American households watch the Super Bowl or something along those lines.
This is one of those things where I don't watch either, so I have no idea.
I watch the Super Bowl when I'm at work because we put the television on that and it gives us something to do and something to watch besides just working.
The debates I'll see like clips from like on the news maybe, but
I like clips of the debate when they're humorous and when they're funny.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to sit and watch either of these things like by choice. So that's what this guy thinks, though. He's thinking Super Bowl with Taylor Swift in the stands. Numbers will watch these boring town halls of Democrats arguing over why Joe Biden is unfit to be president.
The way they're describing it as a town hall, those are really, really boring. I've been to plenty of town halls. I would not describe it as a town hall if you want viewers.
No.
Debate, much more likely to get viewers if you describe it as a debate of some kind.
But I can't imagine it would be that much more likely. And he thinks they're going to get television and cable partners and generate record numbers of viewers. Like, this guy is crazy. He is completely detached from the average person. He thinks they're going to stop watching House of the Dragon or South Park or whatever people are watching these days to watch a Democratic town hall where people are going to bicker about Robert's Rules of Order and slowly pick a candidate, whether it's Joe Biden or someone else. But they wouldn't even be picking a candidate at these.
What would they be doing? I mean, what's the point?
It's unclear exactly what he wants these town halls to do. Apparently, potential nominees would be chosen to participate in the town hall. So people who could become the Democratic presidential candidate could be chosen to participate. But who is going to do that choosing?
Right.
Because we're already, yet again, like this is the third time that he's thrown out any democratic process. I can tell you who will be doing the choosing, and it will be Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and all of their rich buddies. So this guy's plan here to solve this problem, to keep Donald Trump from being able to say, look, they brought in billionaires and rigged the system. His plan is going to lead to exactly that scenario. Because who else could even choose these nominees? He's like, there is no answer here that will satisfy everyone, but hard choices must be made given the tight timetable. And again, democracy, just take it out back and shoot it at this point.
So, I mean, okay, so is there a running mate for Joe Biden?
I think Kamala Harris is expected to be his vice presidential candidate, but she has not been actually chosen yet. Because he has to be nominated, I believe, before he can do that. But I'm not sure because their whole process is confusing.
It seems like the way to go would be maybe more along the lines of, okay, Joe Biden's who you vote for, and then he can step down and the vice president would take over because they're getting to pick the vice president, correct? So,
yeah, but I think a lot of these Democrats would also balk at making Kamala Harris president, because she's not very well liked and not very popular either, especially among the more leftist people in the Democratic Party who hate her for being a drug warrior and a cop and for just generally not being very charismatic. Now, this guy believes that the vice president, that would be Kamala Harris, would be a formidable opponent to Donald Trump. And I suspect the rest of this article is going to be about him making the argument for Kamala Harris. As promised, though, coming up, what did Joe Biden say about corn pops and how he learned about roaches and kids? And he rambles on a lot. Those videos are coming up because you should know who you're voting for. Maybe you know how this process works. Give us a call, 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
If you're looking for work, it's a process of elimination, and you're trying not to be eliminated. So here's a tip for making the cut, and this might seem subtle, but to the person interviewing you, it's not. There is a world of difference between applicants who convey, "I need a job," and those who simply ooze, "I want to work, especially in these lean times when many you're competing with will seem desperate in I'll take anything mode. If you convey specific interest in this job at this company, you will be conspicuous. Thus, the value of going to school on the company you're applying to before the interview. With money and attention so tight now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips for job seekers and everyone else, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. The president is trying to address growing concerns within his own party about his mental fitness for the job. Biden has also sent a letter to Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday saying he's firmly committed to staying in the race. And during a phone interview with MSNBC, the president invited challenges from doubters.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, challenge me at the convention.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced a barrage of questions at Tuesday's briefing about multiple visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. Well, I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist.
NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. It's the alliance's 75th anniversary summit, starting on Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol. But it comes at a politically fraught time, with Russian attacks on Kiev and election uncertainty unfolding in several western states. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
The expanded 32-nation defence pact is vowing to pour more weapons into Ukraine for another year, yet the big prize, membership, is off the table for now. Instead, senior Biden administration officials say NATO will make other significant announcements, including, quote, new steps to bolster Ukraine's air defences. The US president is hosting an event on Thursday with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky before holding a press conference to cap the three-day summit. Joe Biden, though, is fending off calls to quit the presidential race against his predecessor Donald Trump, who's in the past threatened to withdraw from NATO unless European countries pay their fair share.
NASA is a step closer to sending the first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation, as FSN Sally Patterson reports.
For more than a year, a NASA crew carried out Mars mission operations from the US state of Texas. The 4 volunteers lived and worked inside a 3D printed Mars replica, where they grew vegetables, maintained their equipment and habitat, and operated under what NASA calls additional stresses a Mars crew will experience, all from the city of Houston.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And coming up, a story about a Spanish porn passport being imposed by the Spanish government in order to prevent children or kids or people under the age of 18 from watching pornography.
Presumably Spanish pornography, because how is it going to stop any non-Spanish site from?
I don't know how it's going to work in the first place, right? But yeah,
I think fundamentally people just don't understand how the internet works.
It would have to also
or at least the politicians.
Be imposed only on Spanish devices, because if you bought an Italian phone or whatever, it wouldn't have this filter on it.
I'm guessing it's at the ISP. Well, no, I'm guessing it's at the porn site level. So the porn site would have to implement it. But if they're in Spain, well, you're outside of Spain's jurisdiction. Therefore,
in which case, just install a VPN. I would recommend Windscribe.
Or go to a non-Spain pornographic website, and you don't even.
A lot of these sites will probably comply with the Spanish law anyway. Just like every website out there now complies with the European Union's right to delete yourself law, whatever that was called. And that's the reason that when you go to a website now, it prompts you with this stupid thing about accepting cookies and another thing about accepting something else. It's all nonsense. And look, if you want to disable cookies, go incognito or go into your browser and disable cookies. I shouldn't have to click accept or reject on every single website I visit because people out there aren't willing to learn how to use the devices in their possessions. So that's coming up, as well as Bitcoin from Mt. Gox. And I've got a cryptocurrency story that I had forgotten about until Chris reminded me about it. The devil comes in pairs, and Coinbase is now partnering with the U.S. government to sell cryptocurrency for them. Like, the government needs to sell Bitcoin that it's stolen from people. And Coinbase is like, yeah, we'd love your stolen Bitcoin.
I don't think Coinbase has a monopoly quite in the United States, but they're getting pretty big, at least within the United States, right?
Well, and this was always, like, playing ball and being buddy-buddy with the government was always Coinbase's plan. Even back in, like, the early 2000s or the mid-2000s or early 2010s, I can't recall exactly when it was, there was a convention in Florida that Ian happened to be at, Ian Freeman, who is now in prison for helping distribute Bitcoin. And the guys, Brian Armstrong of was it Brian Armstrong? Maybe he's cracking. Anyway, one of the guys who was founding Coinbase, he was the CEO of it then, was talking about his plan to become buddies with the federal government. And like, this is just their long-term plan coming to fruition.
It's actually kind of funny. Like the very introductory business classes will go over like how you start a business and like how new industries come about and such. And like, they literally teach you step 1, fight regulation. Step 2, demand regulation. It's like this next step, because once you've established the industry, you want to make sure that you get rid of all your competitors or anybody who's smaller that could come in and putting up barriers is how you do that, is through regulation.
And that's exactly what Coinbase has been trying to do.
It's like, like, this is not to protect you. It's literally the regulations are to protect Coinbase.
Yep. But let's get to the phones. We do have Rob calling from Vermont. Rob, you are on Free Talk Live. I think you're probably...
Hey, so I did watch the debate there between candidate 1 and candidate 2 last week, and it was the same old...
You watched... Hold on. You watched the entire debate?
I watched about 20 minutes of it. Was about all I could stand.
How long did the debate go on for?
I think that one was on for an hour and a half, but I wasn't going to stay up, Like I said, 20 minutes of it was all I could stand, because, I mean, it was just a lot of bickering and back and forth. There was no, they weren't even answering any of the questions or anything. And, I mean, look at Joe Biden. The guy's always falling down. Half the time you can't remember what he's saying.
Well, would it have made you feel better about them if they had answered the questions they were being asked?
Well, I mean, I think that if they would start telling the people, the things of what they're going to do to help make, our country better. And they're not. And the reason why they're not, they don't care.
Rob, do you think that there is something the president can do to make the country better?
Well, I mean, I think that it depends on individuals themselves.
Okay, so the president can't, right?
But no, not traditionally, no. But I'm kind of liking Bobby Kennedy. He says a lot of things that a lot of people that I have heard out there say like what he's saying.
Sure, but I want to get back to this point, because you said that you would like to know what these people were going to do to help the country or fix the country. I can't remember exactly now how you phrased it, right? But you recognize that only the individuals out there, only we non-politicians, we ordinary people who are just going our lives, the state of the country is in our hands, not the hands of the president. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Yeah. So what exactly do you
Or
want
at least it should be, right?
Well, I mean, that's the way it is. No matter how much they pontificate, the reality is that there's nothing that Biden or Joe or Trump can do to, quote, make the country better.
Oh, I mean, couldn't he start eliminating the tariffs, for example, that, well, I think Trump implemented and then Joe added back after Trump eliminated them before he left office last time around?
Well, eliminating the tariffs in and of itself wouldn't really do anything. You got to get those imports back. And that comes down to the individuals being willing to buy them at the lower prices that would come about as a result of not having the tariffs, and the companies on the other side being willing to export them to us once those tariffs are removed. So even if they get the restrictions out of the way, and the tariffs are the restrictions, even if they get all the red tape, all the pricing, all of the taxes out of the way, it's still up to the individuals out there to produce the actual economics to make that happen. Right.
Right. I mean, I think that what they're saying is they're sort of, telling people that, this is how things were, or whatever the case may be. In other words, he's just sharing with the public, and it's really up to the public themselves, how they're going to dictate how their life is going to be. And, I mean, nobody wants chaos or, all these shootings and stuff like that. That's ridiculous, and
nobody wants them, but they happen. So, I mean, I would suggest that this means that somebody out there wants them. But again, I'm not convinced that the president can do anything about the shootings.
No, he can't. I mean, he can't not physically do that, no, but like what Chris was saying, he could take care of other things. He can, talk with other leaders or, spend money or get us oil or whatever,
So I think what you guys are saying is there are some things that are in the president's power, and then there's other things that are not, and they're talking about the things that are not in his power to do.
Well, I'm saying that the vast majority of things that most Americans want the president to do, like Rob here, he said a number of things that he wants from a president. Like he's mentioned his complaints with the shootings, how he wants to help the country or fix the country or whatever.
I'm not entirely sure what the shootings are that we're talking about, but
probably the mass shootings. But but both of those things.
The president can't do anything about that. Yeah.
But that's how most Americans view it.
Yeah.
They look around and they see these shootings and they see the state of affairs in the country and they go, the president needs to fix this.
Yeah, that's not within his power.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, the president has certain powers like tariffs, I think, and other things, but that's not one of them, and trade relations and things of that nature.
Hey, I got one for you. How about this? How about that we do away with qualified immunity, because good people don't need qualified immunity.
Is that something that? No, I don't think the president would have the power to get rid of that, because that I think they'd have to pass a law for that. I mean, I could be wrong here, but that actually is a Supreme Court ruling that is what resulted in qualified immunity in the first place. Although it maybe depends on what specifically we're talking about. We're talking about law enforcement qualified immunity.
Well, yeah. I mean, look where all of the people that innocent cops kill. Cops kill innocent people.
Yeah, I don't think that's one that the president has the power to get rid of.
No, it would either be the judicial system or the legislative branch. One of those two.
Yeah,
and most likely the legislative.
Well, maybe I haven't hit exactly, the thing that you're asking me, but I think that you understand.
I do. Thank you so much for the call tonight, Rob. It's always good to hear from you. Yeah, the presidential understanding in the United States is one that just scares the hell out of me, because there are a lot of people out there who want the president to do these things that are complete, and they're voting for the president based on their belief that these things are going to happen, and these things are completely beyond the theoretical ability of the president. Like, for those people out there who want the mass shootings to end, please tell me, what do you want Joe Biden to do about it? What do you want Donald Trump to do about it?
I can answer this one. He wants ban guns. That's what they're going to say. Now, what's the response to that?
Well, that doesn't solve the problem, and it just creates mass stabbings and vehicular manslaughter.
It's also not within his power.
Yes, that's true. It is also not within his power. Also a good point. But even if we lived in, not leftists, because leftists are pro-guns realistically, and these people who are anti-gun are not leftists, even though they don't realize it. But if we lived in that sort of crazy Democrat land and the president could just take everyone's guns away, obviously you get to a situation then where only people who are willing to acquire guns illegally have guns, obviously. But the desire to kill one another isn't going to go away. These psychopaths out there who want to do harm to other people will always exist. Whether they have a gun or a knife or a chainsaw or a hammer, they will always be out there, and they will always find a way to hurt the people they want to hurt. And when those people are willing to do those immoral things and break those laws, because there's already laws against stabbing people and shooting people. So I don't know what law against having a gun to be used to shoot somebody would make a difference, because it's already illegal to shoot someone. So if they're willing to do that, then they're willing to illegally get the gun in order to shoot that person.
I don't even think there's like an instrument, like specifically, like whatever you use to kill somebody, it's illegal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's in self-defense maybe or something like that. Yeah.
But once that person who is willing to break the law gets a gun, then you, law-abiding citizen out there who needs to defend themselves, you're incapable of defending yourself against this person who illegally got a gun, because all you have is a knife if you're not in the United Kingdom. And if you are in the United Kingdom, you don't even have a knife. I guess you have
or Massachusetts.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess in those places you have
New
a
Hampshire.
cricket bat.
New Hampshire, they got rid of the knife law a number of years ago. But yeah, Mass still has it, from what I understand, and probably New York and a lot of these other kind of more lefty states.
Do you know how the bloody knuckles thing went in the legislative session this last? I was in prison at the time, but I heard that they were trying to legalize.
I remember that. I don't remember what the results. I often hear about this stuff, and it probably passed, and it's probably legal now, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't care, because that would be a weapon, and I'm not allowed to have weapons.
I don't care, because I'm not going around like punching people with bloody knuckles. But however, that doesn't mean I think people shouldn't be allowed to have that device, right?
Look, if I'm going to get into a fight with someone and they're willing to fight me illegally, then they're also willing to acquire brass knuckles illegally.
And if you want to get brass knuckles and fight somebody else who's also, willingly partaking, go for it.
Yeah,
I don't care.
That's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea, absolutely. But you have the right to make terrible ideas.
Yes. But even if it's not consensual, like if someone is attacking you and they have a weapon, then you need at least an equal weapon in order to defend yourself. If somebody breaks into your home and they have brass knuckles, or they have a knife, or they have a gun, then you're going to need to be able to meet them with an equal amount of force in order to survive the situation. Now, in this scenario, you've done nothing wrong. You've simply been in your home and someone has broken in with a gun and they're going to rob you. If all you have is a cricket bat, then there's nothing you can do against that gun. Gun beats cricket bat.
You can call the police, Aria.
Yes, and 30 to 45 minutes later, they will show up and file a report, and you may or may not be dead by then, and you may or may not, your family may or may not be raped and killed by then, but they will file their report, and that will be the last you ever hear about it. So they're completely useless, and they have to arrive on the scene. And we saw this with the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, I believe is where it was, where the police not only had to arrive at the school, but they then waited an inordinate amount of time before they actually did anything about the active shooting that was going on. And this is the case even if the police had acted immediately when they got there. They still have to travel. And that's a delay that when your life is on the line, you can't afford.
Officer safety first, Aria.
Now, I got to admit, I care more about the kids who are being held in the school against their will, effectively at gunpoint, because they're told that if they don't go, then their parents will go to jail, which puts their parents at gunpoint.
They'll be kidnapped by the state.
Yeah. Yeah. So these kids are being held there against their will. They're disarmed and they're thrown in these cages, and they're told that they have to be there and they don't get a choice in the matter. And then people can show up with weapons and kill them. I care more about those children than I do the police who have put the children in that situation, because realistically they did.
I'd be more concerned about a cop coming and going and being around a school than I would be about kids bringing guns to school.
I would rather have teachers and students with guns than cops with guns, definitely.
Yeah.
And this was the case when my father went to school. Most children, not most children, but most teens had like the shotgun in their truck when they went to school because this was it's the South, so it was relatively common. But there were no school shootings back then because people knew what guns were and they knew how they operated. And you wouldn't want to go somewhere where everyone had a bunch of guns if you were going to execute a mass shooting.
It was, it was funny. I was, there was I don't know if it was a meme exactly, but there was like there was a picture of a girl that I was looking at and she had a gun, like I guess it was like a shotgun, for hunting, that kind of gun. And it was, I thought it was so, and she must've been, I don't know, she probably wasn't older than 10. And, it's just, thinking about like how people on the left probably would see that and just freak out.
They would
it's
be
like,
terrified.
Yeah.
There was I believe he wrote for the New York Times, this reporter who shot an AR-15, and he went to a therapist after this and was diagnosed with PTSD from the act of merely shooting an AR-15
Wait, what?
at a target. Yeah. He wrote a lengthy article about how traumatizing shooting the AR-15 was. Like just being around it was traumatizing.
Why is that traumatizing?
I don't know, dude, because he's a pussy. It would be my assumption, which is short for something that I don't remember off the top of my head. So it's not actually cuss words. So everyone out there freaking out about the FCC, it's not. But that's what it was. And then juxtaposed to that, there's like this 6-year-old kid who shot an AR-15 for the first time in her life. And her post goes viral on Twitter where she's like, yeah, it was pretty cool. I liked it. So this grown man, New York Times reporter was getting shown up by this literal 6-year-old girl. And that's just how they are. I don't know. There's nothing scary about shooting a gun. Yeah, it's loud, but if you've ever been to a rock concert, then you're used to loud noises.
It can definitely be loud. I'll give you that. I'm not really that familiar with my guns, but I've seen the big stuff in indoor like basements like being shot or like on an indoor shooting range, but external
right. Wear some earplugs.
Targets, I guess, and it is loud.
Yeah, but one can always wear earplugs, and that helps mitigate the problem. At least
you pretty much. I think you pretty much would have to.
Certainly
in order
with some
to,
of these guns. Yeah.
Well, especially if it's like an indoor outdoor kind of situation where all that noise comes back right at you.
So I've got these clips here because let's get into them before we get too further into guns, because I'm not a gun person. I've never been. The only time in my life that I really regularly had a gun in my possession was when I was running for sheriff. And that was, one, because my car had been vandalized. My property had literally been attacked and destroyed, and people knew where I lived, and I was receiving an actual shocking number of death threats. Death threats aren't really new to me, but they really escalated by number when I ran for sheriff. So I was openly carrying a 9mm at that point, but I didn't know much about it except how to use it, how to not hurt myself using it. Yeah. But like these other people who will see a gun and immediately know exactly, I'm not one of those people. I can't tell you what a gun is by looking at it or what caliber it is.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I don't know the difference between a 45 and a 9mm except they shoot different bullets. And that's all I need to know.
I'm the same way. I mean, I've shot guns at like shooting ranges like a couple of times in my life and nothing in the last 25 years probably. And I'm like almost 40. So... Yeah.
Well, let's go to these videos because this is one of my favorites. Someone actually made a cartoon of this one, which unfortunately you can't see. I guess I could put in the effort to actually put it on the video stream, but I just now thought about that. So I will set that up in the future that when I go to one of these videos, we can actually show you the video as well. So you're just going to have to listen to the audio with this, but it's amusing. It's Joe Biden.
And by the way, I got hairy legs that turn, that turn blonde in the sun, and the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about.
No, he was doing a campaign rally.
This is at a campaign rally?
Yes, this is back in 2020. He's at a campaign rally. He's giving a speech, and I don't remember exactly where the speech was, but yes, this is from that.
So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Yeah. And like I wish I could remember exactly where that was.
People need to think about like what they're like. Think before they say something or speak. Think before they speak. It's like something you would teach a 4-year-old.
At the same place, though, was where he did the corn pop is a bad dude thing, and I want to go to that. So let's go to that because it's equally as good.
And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards. And there weren't a lot. It was a 3-meter board, and if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
I don't know who Corn Pop is, or who these bad boys are, but like he felt the need to tell the crowd at this campaign rally that Corn Pop was a bad dude, and that he ran a group of bad boys.
And I did. And back in those days, to show how things had changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he said, "I'll meet you outside." My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There was a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools.
Now, if you're having a hard time following this, I have to be completely honest. So am I.
If you're 80 years old and you're running for president, make sure you have somebody younger writing all of your speeches, and then don't deviate.
I don't know what he was trying to do here. He was speaking at a community pool or something. I think this was the pool that he had once been the lifeguard at.
I hope this was like in a crowd of old people in Florida. Because
no, they appeared to be the people behind him in the clips that they shown. They were like mostly black women. So probably it may have been in Florida. I don't know, but not old people.
I suspect that we're just as clueless as to what he was saying as we are.
Yeah, and none of it makes any sense. And he jumps from subjects far too quickly for it to make sense. But even if it did make sense, the subject matter itself is so. But like this is the kind of story I would expect my grandfather to tell me one night when he had had too many drinks. And he was just rambling on, and I was just a little kid staying at my grandparents' house for whatever reason. And my grandpa's sitting in his recliner, sipping his little glass of Jack Daniels, just rambling about how Corn Pop was a bad dude. That's the context in which I would expect statements like this to be made. Instead, this is presidential candidate at the time, Joe Biden, trying to appeal to people and get them to support him. The video actually goes on for another minute or so, but it's more of that same crazy rambling that you would expect from Joe Biden. I have another one though, but I don't think we're going to get in. We're not going to have time at this exact moment, but there is another one full of Joe Biden's weird, random little statements. And some of them you have to truly marvel at because he's president in some of these without knowing what century we're in. Or was it? It was century. He's like, are we in the 20th century or the 21st? Whichever one we're in. Like this, that's the sort of thing I'd expect the president to know, like Barack Obama thinking there were 57 states.
Okay, that one I think is funnier than the century one. The century one I can kind of see, but...
There's more coming up. You can join us. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
What's the difference between a stoplight and a school bus?
A stoplight is a light, and a school bus is a school bus.
Full of children.
Right. So
that's a good
the light doesn't have any kids in it.
That's what you call a derelict, educated derelict.
Yeah,
you gotta come out of Harvard.
I'm really not a derelict. I work for a living.
You are an educated derelict. Well,
Barbara,
you know what?
I agree with
fun,
you.
Play your game.
No.
You're a fornicator, Mark.
When
Barbara.
you pass that next red light, I sure hope they get you good. Now,
Barbara,
hope you don't kill anybody.
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, she hung up on you, Mark.
But I agree with you, Barbara. I was telling you that I agree with you except for the stoplight thing.
Children, Mark. There's children around at every red light. You could possibly kill someone.
This, by the way, gentlemen.
If you would run a red light at 3 a.m. when there's no traffic as far as the eye can see, then you would just as soon run over a school bus and kill all the kids inside.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. The president is trying to address growing concerns within his own party about his mental fitness for the job. Biden has also sent a letter to Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday saying he's firmly committed to staying in the race. And during a phone interview with MSNBC, the president invited challenges from doubters.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites in the party who they know so much more. But any of these guys don't think I should run against me. Challenge me at the convention.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced a barrage of questions at Tuesday's briefing about multiple visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist.
NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. It's the alliance's 75th anniversary summit, starting on Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol. But it comes at a politically fraught time, with Russian attacks on Kiev and election uncertainty unfolding in several western states. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
The expanded 32-nation defense pact is vowing to pour more weapons into Ukraine for another year, yet the big prize, membership, is off the table for now. Instead, senior Biden administration officials say NATO will make other significant announcements, including, quote, new steps to bolster Ukraine's air defences. The US president is hosting an event on Thursday with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky before holding a press conference to cap the 3-day summit. Joe Biden, though, is fending off calls to quit the presidential race against his predecessor Donald Trump, who's in the past threatened to withdraw from NATO unless European countries pay their fair share.
NASA is a step closer to sending the first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation, as FSN Sally Patterson reports.
For more than a year, a NASA crew carried out Mars mission operations from the US state of Texas. The 4 volunteers lived and worked inside a 3D printed Mars replica, where they grew vegetables, maintained their equipment and habitat, and operated under what NASA calls additional stresses a Mars crew will experience, all from the city of Houston.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a unique take on President Joe Biden's predicament. It comes from the only man to have beaten Biden in a primary this year. Jason Palmer was considered a maverick, a venture capitalist who put his name forward for the Democratic Party's nomination in 16 states and territories, arguing that the Democrats urgently needed to pass the leadership torch to a younger generation. He lost to Biden in 15 of those races, but not in American Samoa, far off in the Pacific, where his victory was the first time any sitting president has lost a primary since Jimmy Carter in 1980.
I'm a canary in the coal mine, the fact that I won in American Samoa, but there were other canaries. Biden didn't do the Super Bowl interview, which is an incredible opportunity to speak to the American public. He's done very few, addresses to the nation on the top issues like inflation, the economy, immigration. Now, that's not to say he's not been a great president and a incredible public servant for 50 years, but the writing has been on the wall. He even called himself a transitional president 4 years ago. I just think optimism blinds people sometimes.
Jason Palmer is joining calls for the president to abandon his re-election quest and believes the next 2 weeks will be critical in determining whether the Democrats can find their footing anew in the race against Donald Trump. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. And NASA is a step closer to sending its first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation. There's more from us on X at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
Procter & Gamble introduced a beginner series of its Bounty paper towel brand this week, specifically designed to assist novices in acclimating to the household cleaning product. The new entry-level paper towels will reportedly feature bold labels and guide markers clearly printed on the surface of each sheet, as well as a step-by-step instructional DVD in each package.
Make sure that your paper towel is directly on top of the stain and not beside the stain. Otherwise, you won't absorb any liquid. Place your paper towel directly on the stain and make a gentle wiping motion.
And in this week's local news, an area man knows that deep down, he's not done vomiting. In other news, Los Angeles residents are plagued by a roving pack of feral celebrities living in the Hollywood Hills. God wonders what happens to humans after they die. And a local dad clarifies that this is not a food stop. I was told early on that I would never be able to procreate, but I imagine the cold, dejected sensation I experience at the end of this news summary is similar to what a father feels when holding a child of his own flesh and blood.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live. As always, you can weigh in with whatever we're discussing, or you can change the subject and talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. That number is 603-283-6160. And there is exciting stuff that we've been doing lately. If you're subscribed to us on Patreon, that's either with Free Talk Live or with LRN.FM, because there are two Patreons for different purposes, then you're getting the Free Talk podcast early every single week. Starting about 2 weeks ago. You're now getting it on Thursdays, which is neat. A nice little reward for people who follow us on Patreon. That's amps.freetalklive.com. More about that later. But we're also doing a new video series, which, by the way, the latest episode of the podcast, I meant to say, had Nikki with me on it. And since she lives so close to me, it's about 10 minutes away, she's probably going to be on most of the Free Talk Cast episodes with me because it's so easy for her to just pop over, take half an hour to record a podcast, edit it, get it online. Anyway, she was with me on the last week talking about bornfreefamily.com, which is her website, some of the projects that she's got going on. So check that out at freetalkcast.com. I'm hoping that tomorrow night we also record one of the new video series that we started called Libertarians On, which is where a libertarian spends 1 minute talking about an issue that's important to them and what the libertarian perspective or their libertarian perspective on that issue is. Right now, we've only got one of these, and that's Ben Schaefer of Finance.gold. That's finance spelled like the Greek letter phi, by the way. He did one on money, and these are 1 minute long at the most, and that's a tough cap for libertarians who tend to ramble on incessantly. And that's why I made it a 1 minute long thing, because I want a playlist of 200 or 300 videos of various libertarians giving the perspective on bicycle helmets or seatbelt laws or property taxes or income taxes or public schools or whatever issue it is important to them. 1 minute long, easily shareable, easily viewable, watchable. Hopefully I can talk Nikki into doing one of those tomorrow, perhaps on the importance of having a family that's free of government controls. Because I didn't know until we talked in the podcast last week that it's actually possible to have a child and get their social security number and birth certificate later if you want to do those things. I thought they sort of had to be done sort of right then.
I don't know about the birth certificate, but the social security number for sure.
Yeah. Well, the birth certificate as well. It's a little more complicated because some states require your midwife or your hospital to immediately report the birth to the government, which is crazy when you stop to think about it, because the government has to be notified every time a child is born in some states. Like, that's crazy. That's truly Orwellian. So check that out. That's freetalkcast.com. That's where you can find the latest episode of that. And we're going to be recording another episode tomorrow night. I tried to get Tom Woods on one of these episodes as well. Unfortunately, he's too busy with Freedom Fest and some other projects he's got going on. I want to talk about the Chevron deference and how the latest Supreme Court has turned away from that in favor of the major questions doctrine. And I want to get someone who's very knowledgeable about this subject to get on to discuss it with us. So Tom Woods recommended a professor to me that I'm going to be getting in touch with to hopefully get him on one of the Free Talk casts or here on Free Talk Live. So all of those exciting things are coming up. So check out all of that. And if you want to follow all of it, freetalkblog.com is probably the best way to go about finding all of these different links to various projects, as well as the radio show, of course, freetalklive.com. However, that one is more tricky to edit because it's got this weird back end that Greg of Intercoin ended up making, and it's not important. Check out freetalkblog.com if you want links to all of that stuff. But let's go to the phones. I'm done playing the Biden clips. I decided during that break because we played enough of them, and they're all more or less the same. He just sort of rambles on endlessly. But we do have Mark on the line joining us to talk about Biden. Mark, you're on Free Talk Live.
Howdy, how y'all doing?
Hey, what's on your mind tonight?
No, y'all just had a caller that called in related to the current affairs, especially with Joseph R. Biden and the debate with Trump. And yeah, I did watch the whole debate through as well by accident. I was having too much of a good time. I was with my a buddy of mine. He and I were just chatting back and forth on Signal, and I was just doing screenshots of the debate on YouTube. And
okay,
man, Biden looked so bad. He was standing there, mouth agape, eyes open, and just kind of looking a little lost whenever the conversation was not going the way he was expecting it to go. And he just did not look coherent at all either.
From what I saw, he didn't look too great. The last presidential debate I tried to sit down and watch was the Democratic debate between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton in 2016. And it took me about 30 minutes to watch roughly 5 minutes of video because I kept having to pause it to critique the dumb things they were saying because the things they were saying were dumb and had to be critiqued. And I realized 5 minutes in that if I didn't stop doing that, if I didn't turn the stupid thing off, then I was going to take 15 hours to watch it. And I can imagine that this debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, one of my favorite parts was when they started arguing about who's got the better golf game. That was one of my favorites.
During the debate?
When they were coming to the close.
Yes.
Yeah, near the end of the debate. It was like the last 6 to 8 minutes of the discussion.
Donald Trump got super triggered because Joe Biden claimed to have I don't know what.
A handicap.
Some sort of handicap that I don't know much about handicaps in golf, but Joe Biden had one that Donald Trump didn't think was right. So they argued about golf for a second. It was something.
Yeah, no, that was really an odd part in the conversation. And I know that Trump is because he's a golfer and he's got many golf courses that he either owns or partially owns or has negotiated contracts with. So he's pretty familiar with that. I don't know if it's a sport or not, but it looks kind of like if it is, it's a really half-assed sport in my opinion. But the thing is that in the conversation, in the debate that they had, if he were to stick this to his points and then attack afterwards, I think he would have been able to communicate way better. But he did take good opportunities and good advantages of what Biden gave him, because there are certain conversations and certain things that Biden said, like, yeah, we beat Medicare. And he's just like, yeah, you beat it to death. And I was just like, okay, yeah, give that one to him. He did a very good job on those parts because those things are just basically handed to him. And I don't know if y'all saw this, but immediately after the debate, Trump walks out. Biden, with Jill, is trying to go down one single step. and one of the stagehands or someone in a suit comes up to almost trying to hold his hand or hold his forearm to come down one step. Biden has to pivot his body perpendicular to the stair, squat down just a little bit, put his left foot out, and then he could take the next step down. And then he walked over to where the moderators were. And I'm just like, I didn't realize that till another YouTuber made a comment about that. And I was like, wait, what? So I looked over the next day when I was at work, just pulled up the video because I saw that. And I was like, no way. So I sent the clip, the link over to another buddy.
So you're
of mine
saying
at
he
work,
can barely walk down steps?
He couldn't walk down a single step, a single average American step that you got in the States. And it was one step because that's all he did.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen it,
I haven't seen that, but yeah, I certainly believe you. I don't doubt you at all. It's weird for him to talk about his golf handicap when he can't walk down steps.
Nope, he couldn't do that, and it was something that someone just made a random comment. I was like, "Oh, did he just do that?" And I was like, "Wait," and I just listened to it because I was doing something else, like washing dishes or with the family. But I went back and I watched it again, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he can't walk down a single step." And I'm just like, "Ugh." And I sent that link to a buddy of mine as well.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, really odd because that's how it is.
Well, thank you so much for the call tonight, Mark. I didn't know a lot of that, and kudos to you for being able to sit through the entire debate, even though you were laughing at it with a friend. And I suspect that makes it more entertaining, like a debate drinking game.
Yeah, I was thinking that was the first thing I thought was drinking. He must be like some sort of drinking game he was doing, because otherwise, like, how do you do that?
I could see that being entertaining,
yourself?
but like you've got to limit it I don't know how you would go about doing that. You can't
have a limiter because you can't drink that much.
Yeah, it can't be every time someone says something stupid, obviously, because that happens all the time. And I accidentally hit the wrong button. So anyway, you have a story, Chris, about Spain that I've really been wanting to get into since you first mentioned it, because they've imposed a new a porn filter, which in what they're saying will allow them to prevent children or people under the age of 18 from accessing pornography. Or
yeah, here's the title of the story. It's they're calling it a passport, a porn passport. So the idea is, I believe, that it's for adults to access porn websites, but they have this idea that like their jurisdiction is like worldwide when it's not. So they just don't understand how the internet works, I think, because effectively what they're saying is that the government is requiring pornographic websites to basically ID their users, and then if you don't have, and they're doing it through this porn passport, which is kind of interesting because it's not like anything I've ever heard before. But here, I'll read a little bit off.
Hold that thought, because we have Dave Ridley on the line from here in New Hampshire. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, I feel important. Thanks, Aria.
Yeah, of course. What's on your mind tonight?
And welcome back to the world of the living.
Thank you. Well, that's the weird thing about being in prison, is that you're always part of the world of the living, but you're forced to watch it from the sidelines.
Yeah, you're right. And that's not the right way for me to put it, but it's good to have you back.
Well, thank you. No, I just always like to share the prison experience with people, because the federal prison experience with people, because it's not something that, as of yet, everyone gets to experience. And it is very similar to having, the way I described it in one article I wrote, that I don't remember what ended up happening with it, it got published somewhere, was that it was like riding Charon's boat across the river Styx. And then you spend your entire time there trying to earn a coin to buy your passage back. And of course, your coin is the amount of time that you serve. But you are stuck there, whether you want to be or not. And you get to watch all of your friends and family go on living their lives. And you're like a ghost hovering in the background who can't play any active role in their lives. It's a miserable experience.
You were at Air FMC, correct? Which is the same place, or Devon's FMC, which is the same place that Ian is right now, correct?
Correct. He's actually in the camp now as well. So he's in literally the same building I was at when I left. Like he's eating lunch at the same places. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to be calling about this initially, but that brings up a relevant question, and that is, like, how did they treat you in terms of mail? Did you feel like they withheld your mail inappropriately?
Well, I didn't at the time because I didn't know about a couple of things that had happened. One of my really good friends that I've known for like 10 years, perhaps, maybe even longer, she had been messaging me through their messaging system back and forth, and then suddenly I didn't hear anything else from her. I just thought, okay, well, I guess she's busy. That's fine. I mean, I'm in prison, and that happens when you're in prison. At first, people stay in contact with you, but their lives get busy, and they just sort of have to move on. As much as they want to stay in contact with you, you're just not part of their life anymore, and they have to carry on with their life. So I was used to it at that point, but it was still strange from her that it happened like 6 months into my incarceration, but just suddenly no contact from her. It turns out that the BOP had removed her from my email system without notifying me or notifying me of why, and she had sent me a letter telling me what had happened, but they rejected that as well. And they led her to believe that I was dead. So she spent December until May the 9th, when I was released from prison and I had my phone again, believing that I was dead.
Wow.
Well, no wonder you're back in the world of the living.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really messed up story.
Yeah. And there was at least one other person that this happened with, but not to that extent. Like that was egregious. Like the actions they took, the wording they used was so vague that it wasn't like, we're not allowing you to have contact with this inmate. It was something to the effect of, this inmate is no longer available to be reached, or something like that, which made it sound to her like I was dead. And that's so messed up. I didn't know that had happened until I was released.
And with snail mail, you should have received either 2 or 3 pieces of snail mail from me. Did you?
I did, but I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. And I'm sorry to say that, but I didn't know how to respond. But I did receive them.
I was not expecting a response, and I didn't really even want one, because I consider that 50-cent stamp to be worth. I mean, talking to me is not the most useful way for you to spend that 50-cent stamp, because I know 50 cents is worth a lot more than 50 cents in a jail.
Well, they are 66 cent stamps now, and you can buy 20 each week, and that's the most that you can buy. But you can hold on to them, and I knew that I was going to send the letters, and some weeks were slower than others, so I would buy 20 every single week. And by the end of it, I left someone with about 200 stamps.
Wow.
When I ended up leaving custody, because I don't need them on the outside. I can get as many stamps as I want on the outside. It is possible, and it's important when you're in prison. If you know that you're going to use something, go ahead and buy it now on this week's commissary sheet. And I realize if you're in prison that you can't hear this, but if you're going to prison, keep this in mind in the future. Don't put off buying something for later. Do it now, because there's a good chance you will lose commissary, or commissary will be delayed, or any other number of things, or they won't want to bring you your commissary in the rain. That happened to us on one occasion. They're like, nope, we know you're supposed to get this stuff on Thursday and you're excited and you're waiting for it, but we're going to wait because we can make you wait because it's raining and we don't want to be out there in the rain. Or you can lose commissary. We lost it for 5 weeks. Or they can just randomly do inventory of the entire warehouse and not give anyone any warning whatsoever. So suddenly for 3 weeks, no one gets any inventory or any commissary. So go ahead and buy whatever you need now. So if you know you're going to use stamps, go ahead and buy them.
Yeah, I think it was Ian was telling me like he couldn't get stamps for like a couple of weeks or something like that. And that just kind of, or envelopes or something. I was just like.
Envelopes, yeah.
Yeah.
When I left the federal prison, so they're really bad at business, right? Everything they sell you on commissary is at a 30% markup. So if they buy a box of envelopes for $1, they charge you at least $1.30 for them. Some things are marked up higher than others.
Now, when we're saying marked up, we're talking about over retail?
We're talking about whatever they pay for them.
Yeah.
They charge you, the inmate, 30% or more on top of that.
So how do you know that it's 30% over?
Because they tell you.
Oh, okay.
They don't tell you how much it is on each individual item, but they do make it clear that there's a markup of at least 30% on everything.
Okay.
So they do that, and each year, every fiscal year, they get a certain amount of money to go to their commissary, and they use that to buy everything they're out of, and they set some aside to rebuy the things that they're going to run out of throughout the next year. By October of last year, when when I was there. They didn't have any money to fulfill any of these special purpose orders, which are special commissary orders you can place where they take the money out of your account and they buy the thing usually on Amazon, and then 2 to 3 months later it arrives and they pay themselves back out of the money they took out of your account. And I don't know why they do it that way, but they do. And they didn't have the money for any of that. They were out of just about every kind of chip, every soft drink, every size of T-shirt and sweatpants and sweatshirt and shorts that you could get. They were out of coffee. They were just out of a huge list of things because the fiscal year was about to begin again, and they were completely out of money. And this is in spite of the fact that they charge a 30% markup on everything they sell. Now, obviously, the reason for this is because they don't actually keep the money that they make. They don't keep that 30% profit in the trust fund account, in the commissary account. Commissary doesn't keep that. They give it to the BOP, who then spends it on tractors or whatever they want. They do something stupid with it. It's just a black hole for money. And that 30% profit that you pay on all of these things just goes into that black hole of money that is the Bureau of Prisons. And that's why they're out of envelopes right now. And they probably, at this point, they are still out of envelopes, I would imagine. They may have gotten them by now because envelopes are relatively cheap. But that's why they run out, because they only buy certain amounts, and then they run out of money for that month and they can't spend any more, or they run out of money for that fiscal year and can't spend any more. And it's exactly as stupid as you would expect, man. So hopefully they have envelopes now, but I don't know. Dave, did you have any other questions? Sorry to ramble about commissary for 5 minutes, but it's frustrating when you're inside the system, and it's mind-bendingly stupid when you're outside of the system.
Yeah, mind-bendingly stupid is the right word for that. I don't even how do I I'm just thinking about this and like how do I respond to this? Like it's so government, right?
Right. It is exactly what you would expect.
And people actually go to their polls and get excited about voting and so as if it's somehow going to benefit them.
No. And that's the issue with the administrative state in general that came about as a result of the Pendleton Act that basically gave these bureaucrats tenure where they can't be gotten rid of by the executive branch, where you can change the president all you want, but the person who heads the BOP isn't changing. The Department of Education head isn't changing. Fauci was in his career for 25 years before he retired. It didn't matter who was president. These administrative bureaucrats, they remain in power regardless. And they run the things how they want to run them. And a lot of it is just complete nonsense like you see within the Bureau of Prisons. And to the credit of the BOP employees, all of them hated the BOP system. I did not speak to a single staff member there who was like, yeah, it's got some kinks that need to be worked out, but it's a fine system. Everyone there hated it. They hated all of the red tape, all of the nonsense, all of the stupid ways of doing things. They just hated it. I'm told that there's a list of the 430-something-ish federal agencies, and that the Bureau of Prisons consistently rates at the bottom of that list. So out of all of the government agencies, the Bureau of Prisons is the worst of them, which I used to say that it's like if the DMV was tasked with keeping people alive. That's what you would get. That's what the BOP is. But apparently the BOP is even worse than the DMV. And I guess we lost Dave Ridley. Dave, are you still with us?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, so did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was going to call. I was calling in about something else, actually, which is a piece of good news from New Hampshire. And that is, I guess, according to the New Hampshire, it's a New Hampshire, it's a New Hampshire bureaucracy that has something to do with businesses. It's called the DBEA. I can't remember what that stands for. But they sent out a news release that says, quote, for the third consecutive year, New Hampshire exports set a record high, topping $7.6 billion in 2023.
Right.
While nationally, the export of U.S. goods was down 2.2%, unquote.
So New Hampshire is doing better than the national average.
Quite a bit, as usual.
Where are they getting that data from? Is that That must interesting.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time to get into all that. But thank you so much for the call tonight, Dave, and thank you for the letters when I was in prison. I enjoyed the reading. It was a lot of stuff that he had written on the Shire Society forum, and it gave me something to do, which is critically important in prison because there's not a whole lot to do. But yeah, the experience as a whole, it's about as stupid as you would expect and about as miserable as you'd expect. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It is Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. The president is trying to address growing concerns within his own party about his mental fitness for the job. Biden has also sent a letter to Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday saying he's firmly committed to staying in the race. And during a phone interview with MSNBC, the president invited challenges from doubters.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites in the party who they know so much more. But any of these guys don't think I should run against me. Challenge me at the convention.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced a barrage of questions at Tuesday's briefing about multiple visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist.
NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. It's the alliance's 75th anniversary summit, starting on Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol. But it comes at a politically fraught time, with Russian attacks on Kiev and election uncertainty unfolding in several western states. FSN's Benji High reports.
The expanded 32-nation defence pact is vowing to pour more weapons into Ukraine for another year, yet the big prize, membership, is off the table for now. Instead, senior Biden administration officials say NATO will make other significant announcements, including, quote, new steps to bolster Ukraine's air defences. The US president is hosting an event on Thursday with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky before holding a press conference to cap the three-day summit. Joe Biden, though, is fending off calls to quit the presidential race against his predecessor Donald Trump, who's in the past threatened to withdraw from NATO unless European countries pay their fair share.
NASA is a step closer to sending the first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation, as FSN's Sally Patterson reports.
For more than a year, a NASA crew carried out Mars mission operations from the US state of Texas. The 4 volunteers lived and worked inside a 3D printed Mars replica, where they grew vegetables, maintained their equipment and habitat, and operated under what NASA calls additional stresses a Mars crew will experience, all from the city of Houston.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
join the discussion. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, which is short for digital cash. Are you tired of the ever-inflating U.S. dollar? You can live your life on Dash with bitrefill.com, where you can buy gift cards from big retailers, including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and easy to use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And you can learn more at bitrefill.com and apparently you can use Dash to buy gift cards for groceries, gasoline, and all of that other awesome stuff. So check that out as well if you want to learn more about it at bitrefill.com. That's bitrefill.com. Let's stay on the phones, though. We do have Skeeter on the line. Skeeter, you're on Free Talk Live.
It's your boy, the evolutionary capitalist, Young Skeet. Hey, I called in about I saw you had Christopher Gronsky on your show like a week ago or something. I wanted to call in about that, but I had some questions, just observing what I see in your video feed. Why the hell do you have
We had Chris Gronsky on when we were still at the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Yeah, the legal flat earth sovereign citizen, the liar, like Bear Arms. But I had a question for you and your co-host, Chris, right?
Yep.
I see you have a nihilism tattoo. Why the hell do you have a nihilism tattoo on your arm when you think you can hold people responsible for following the non-aggression principle in your utopia, huh?
I don't think I can let me answer the question, Skeeter. I don't think I can hold people responsible for anything, nor do I desire to.
What? So you don't care if people follow? So once government goes away for some whatever
Skeeter,
reason.
You didn't say anything about what I care about and what I don't care about. You asked about what I think I can and can't do. And those are very different things. Yes, I care. I want people. Let me answer the question. I care. I want people to be moral. But do I have any ability whatsoever to make people be moral? No.
No, but you would if you had that power.
No, I would not.
If someone violates the non-aggression principle, you're allowed to prevent them or punish them, right? That's what the non-aggression principle says.
You're allowed
but you
to
have a nihilism tattoo.
You're allowed to prevent an act of aggression that is being taken. You're allowed to put an end to that act of aggression. I would certainly argue that you do not have the right to retaliate against an act of aggression that is no longer taking place. So I would suggest that no, you do not have the right to punish an act of aggression.
Oh, that's weird. Maybe we should talk about that some other time because I had a problem with that too. I thought about that too because how long after the aggression are you allowed to punish the person? So you're not allowed to punish the person unless it's during the act of aggression. Is that what you're saying?
Well, define what you mean by allowed, because I'm not going to tell other people what they can and can't do, and I'm not going to attempt to force people to do one thing or not do a thing.
So you can't do anything after the crime has been committed. Like let's say I rape you.
I don't know if they
Chris
can.
Is not a.
I don't know if they can or can't. Right? That's got nothing to do with me. What other people do and what other people choose to do is not a matter that I choose to spend any amount of my time or energy focusing on.
What action is permitted in response to an act of aggression that isn't considered an act of aggression itself? That's what I'm asking. Like you're saying that you cannot. What's that? Maybe we should drop this because I didn't. Well, how do you square all this with when you have a nihilism tattoo on your arm?
Well,
you know what nihilism is, right?
The answer to your question is forgiveness. Obviously, that's the only thing you can do in return for a NAP violation at the end of the day is to forgive the aggressor. Committing further acts of violence against them does not end violence. It merely extends it. If I hit someone for hitting me, I'm not ending violence. I'm committing an act of violence.
So let's say I steal one of your I break into your studio, steal one of your microphones. After I leave and I go home and start using it for whatever reason, you can't do anything in retaliation. Is that what you're saying?
I can. I would not.
Oh, you can though.
But look, define can. Do you mean from a moral perspective? I would say no.
From a moral perspective, you nihilist?
Well, that's not. Well, then you have to be specific in your questions. Can I physically do something about it? Sure. Do I want to? No, probably not. It wouldn't be worth it to me. I would simply choose to forgive you and to take whatever steps were necessary to prevent it from happening again, like changing my locks or installing security cameras or whatever.
I'll call in. I didn't really want to get too far deep into it. I just wanted you to square what you did, nihilism and whatever this position you're.
I don't think you know what nihilism is.
I mean, there's several definitions, but I don't like philosophy. Philosophy is dead anyway. But I wanted to talk about. Huh?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Yeah, philosophy is dead and useless. I don't know why you even bother adopting anything that comes out of philosophy other than utilitarianism. That's the only useful thing.
So, what did you want to talk about tonight, Skeeter?
Chris Gronsky. Also, I had a question about that guy's shirt, but maybe we won't ever get to that. So, I called in because you guys constantly have those legal flat earthers on your show, and you guys give them a platform to present their lies, their bad faith interpretation of. Excuse me.
Yeah. What do you mean by constantly? Because we've had Gronsky on once in the last 2 years.
Well, you also have people like Bear Arms on, and they give and they present clear and patent lies about legal interpretation about tax law and citizenship.
Is Bear Arms a caller?
No, you had like a 3-hour special though. I think you were in prison at the time.
Okay, well, I can't do anything.
Did you put in work for your bio?
So I wasn't there for that. So I don't know the person you're referring to.
And you gave him a full 3-hour special with Jane and Ian.
Okay.
That's when Ian was still out, and you were I think you were in prison.
Yeah.
So shortly after you started serving your sentence.
Okay.
Which
you should write Ian and ask him these questions then, because.
No. But
me.
You had him on. You just had Christopher Gronsky on your show, so
I did.
It's related, right? So why do you guys give them a platform to tell their lies? That they tell lies.
Is it not the same reason that we give you a platform? You're allowed to call in. This is an open phone show.
You guys question everything that comes out of my mouth. With them, they tell explicit lies that you can fact check yourself, which you don't even bother to, and which can cause damage to your listeners. Your listeners are so gullible. They're libertarians. They might think they're not liable to pay federal taxes or that they're not federal citizens, like some of your co-hosts already believe. And you guys don't even look at the tax code they refer to, and you can see that they're lying.
I was definitely skeptical of Gronsky's claims during the segment that you're referring to.
Yeah, you see, Skeeter, you think that everybody who's listening believes the people who are on the show. And just like we don't necessarily believe what you're saying, doesn't necessarily mean we believe what he's saying.
But here's the difference. Everything I say, I get pushback from. Them, there's nothing. I didn't hear you fight back on that.
Well, he didn't call and yell at me either. Right?
That's not an excuse not to challenge a false idea. And mine are all valid.
I definitely did say, at least during that during that segment, that I do not believe the claim that if Ian had just said, no, look, I'm no longer a federal citizen, that the judge would have dismissed the tax evasion charges. I know for a fact that was said in that segment. And that was me challenging his claims in a real context that actually mattered.
I think I did remember that. That's probably true, but that's more than your co-hosts are doing.
They weren't there for that.
Bring on.
It was just me and Gronsky.
I'm talking about in general, all the sovereign citizens you have on your show. Chris Gronsky.
Okay, hold on a second. I don't think we've had a sovereign citizen on this show that I can recall. The only sovereign that maybe would be a sovereign citizen that I've even interacted with that I can recall in the 8 years or whatever I've been here was one of our state reps. It was a trial where he was doing a driving without a license kind of thing, and he actually won on one of the charges, but it was mostly because of the prosecution's failures. But yeah,
that video is available on Freekeen as well for those who want to watch it. It's a bit hard to hear at this point because it's like a 10-year-old video and the audio quality is just not great. But he did do a good job of it. I don't think I would call Jay Noon a sovereign citizen. I don't think Jay Noon
No, not Jay Noon. This was a state rep.
I know, but Skeeter keeps asking about Jay Noon.
Oh,
he specifically cited Jay Noon.
Jay Noon's not a sovereign citizen.
Do you see his bad faith legal interpretations? It's the typical sovereign citizen. He's the type of guy that'll fight law in court based upon bad faith interpretation of law.
Skeeter, there's a difference between somebody who's a sovereign claims to be a sovereign citizen and somebody who's just going down sort of that path or going in that direction. People can go in a certain direction because of, how do I say this, things they want to see and recognize that it's crazy. And there's also people who are just absolutely crazy, like you're saying. And there's a difference.
That's an understatement of the year. A certain direction. He believes both Christopher Gronsky and Bear Arms. The fact that the stupid claims that both you're not a federal citizen, and it's right there. It's right there in the tax code, right?
I don't know what claims they make.
Inclusion statements as definition.
I don't know what claims. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I have a hold button. You don't. Go ahead. I don't know what claims they make, and I don't know what Jay Noon does or doesn't believe. But I will say that being willing to fight the law when they come at you unfairly and they unfairly prosecute you, when you've done nothing to consent to the laws that they're imposing on you, is a rational, insane thing to do.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's like he can if he's gonna fight the law, I don't care if he's wrong. At least he's doing it. What are you doing, Skeeter? You're doing nothing.
What am I doing? I'm in California doing God's work. I'm accelerating the state. I'm closer to freedom than you guys are. I'm closer to collapsing the federal government than you guys are. Look at your stupid shirt. This is what I called about. Look at your stupid shirt. You want to legalize marijuana and all drugs so you can give the federal government $200 billion a year?
Wait. Maybe we should read the shirt to people.
You want to make them more fiscally sound?
Yeah,
is that what you want to do?
Let's read the shirt to people.
Monkey.
Hold on.
Can I say pussy? You're a pussy.
Yeah, you can say that. The shirt says legalize gay marijuana. It doesn't say anything about taxing marijuana. It says.
Well, then let me ask him. Don't you want to legalize all drugs?
Who are you asking that to?
I guess he's talking to me.
The gay guy.
Yeah. I don't see why we need to regulate drugs. I think there's better solutions to determine whether or not like something is going to kill you or not kill you or help you or what side effects might occur. There's I'm trying to think some of the names of this, but like there's like stamps, for lack of a better term, to say, hey, yes, this is in fact, it meets certain certifications or qualifications, and government doesn't necessarily need to be involved in those non-government systems.
That's a small price to pay. That's a small price for getting rid of.
But why should I have to pay for it in the first place when
you're not paying for it?
A non-government entity can do the same thing, and I can choose to take advantage of it or not take advantage of it.
You're not necessarily paying for all these things. Most of this stuff is paid for by debt.
What are you talking about?
And that's because we're not necessarily responsible for paying off the debt. There's something called a default, idiot. You know what a default is? That's what I'm striving toward.
And in the meantime, they're still going to be taking money from my account, whether I like it or not, or coming to my house and taking my house.
So I like the sovereign citizens here better because they're like, the U.S. government is overblown and distorted, and we're just going to not listen to it anymore. I like that. Skeeter's idea, on the other hand, hey, calm down, dude. Skeeter's idea, on the other hand, is, the government sucks. So let's exploit that as much as possible and get as much money and stuff from the government as we can in order to collapse it sooner.
The funny thing about this is Skeeter is not that different in some respects in terms of his strategy than the very strategies that we've actually used in Keene. Like, just think about parking tickets, for example.
Yeah.
We've fought every single parking ticket that they give us, and it eventually they give up, and it's kind of a similar kind of thing that Skeeter's kind of arguing. It's funny because it's just like I don't think he's gonna get anywhere with what he's doing alone in California,
right? Because he's only one,
right? But that doesn't mean something couldn't be accomplished if maybe.
But to be fair, we also don't want him in New Hampshire because he has now both talked about killing me and raping me here on national radio. So,
that's not
stay
cool.
in California.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually surprised we're still having him on because.
Well, at the moment, I just got him turned down really low, and he's just sort of continuing to yell and scream at us, and I think that's tremendously entertaining. So I'm going to allow that to continue.
And you know what?
This
is the most libertarian thing to do too, right here. Like Mark has been and there's been a couple other people. I think Daryl Perry, where people have made threats over the years, and they've they just won't, if somebody calls up like that, they will not talk to that person,
right?
And I'm like, no, we should be talking to that person, right? We don't agree because it's you can express yourself, and yes, I don't have to agree with how you're expressing yourself, but Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think when Skeeter threatened to kill me, I don't think he was really threatening to kill me. He was just, I don't know exactly what he was saying. I'd have to listen to it again, but it wasn't worth taking seriously in the same way that like that psychopath from Arizona. I still wouldn't object to taking the psychopaths from Arizona.
Is that James? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, James. Okay.
But I mean, it does happen occasionally. But Skeeter at least occasionally is able to provide entertaining conversation. And the first part of this was
don't get me
entertaining.
wrong. This is super entertaining. I mean, Riley over here is laughing his off.
It's been entertaining.
Yeah.
I will say again, though, that the approach that Skeeter has and the approach that these sovereign citizens have, they both lead to the same goal, probably with the same expediency. Now, Skeeter's plan is to just cause the government to spend itself to death. And that's an approach. And the goal of these sovereign citizens, as I understand them, I don't know any sovereign citizens, and I'm not an expert on the subject, but their goal is basically to live outside of the U.S. government, say, hey, we're living our lives, you don't have any jurisdiction over us, and we're just going to ignore you until you go away. And both of those are just trying to make the government go away as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think this is my perspective on sovereign citizens. Like, I don't necessarily think. I think their arguments are kind of like they're not going to achieve anything. I don't necessarily know that they're right either. But at the same time, if you're going to drive without a license, you're doing more than me. I have a license. I don't necessarily agree with that license. I don't think we should have to have a license, but I have a license. So if you're willing to stand up and take that fight on.
And that's hardcore.
Yeah, that's very hardcore.
I don't necessarily agree with some of the claims that I know that sovereign citizens have made. Like, hey, look, no, they summoned you, and the name that they have on here is in all caps, and that's clearly not you, right? I don't get on board with that sort of stuff because my eyes gloss over, and I'm like, look, that's not going to hold up in a federal courtroom. Yeah, a traffic court, the judge might just throw your ticket out because you're giving him a headache and it's not worth dealing with.
Yep.
But that's not all it is. Like Jay Noon, he does live his life without a driver's license, and he has gotten, I think, arrested a few times as a result of that activism. But he's right. He does have the right to travel without being licensed by the government in order to do it.
It's actually interesting. So like talking about sovereign citizens and stuff, there's actually some things that I've actually seen that very much kind of go in that direction that I think Bonnie, for example, I'm trying to think what it was court case. Was it, I don't know, well, it probably wasn't a parking ticket, but she went in with some court case and she fought it. And it was something along the lines of, well, maybe it was a parking ticket. Yeah, I think it was a parking ticket. I think she's the only one who's got a parking ticket in Keene in like the last 5 years, something like that. And she fought it. It was only because Ian and Bonnie went in together and requested it. And then they couldn't. And the question she was asking was something along the lines of, well, who's responsible for this ticket, basically. And it was very sovereign citizen-ish in that, like, it was because it was registered, the vehicle was registered to an LLC. And so without them actually presenting evidence of like presenting the law and like determining who is liable, is it the driver or who parked it, or is it the owner of the vehicle? And without that, she actually won. So it was sort of in that almost sovereign citizen direction, but in reality, there was some basis for it. And
well, that's an important thing to know, right? If somebody parks my car and they're driving it and they get a parking ticket, why is that my responsibility? And is it their responsibility as the actual driver? Because it's going to be on me, on my record and my vehicle.
Yeah.
So those are all valid questions.
Ultimately, it was a valid question, and it's what won her the case because they failed to present the law and the judge didn't know whether or not she was liable or not. And because basically Ian and Bonnie had gone in together to request it, it wasn't even like you could assume it was Bonnie or Ian or you know what I mean? Like nobody admitted to driving it or parking it or anything. So
one of the things that made me really happy was when I ran for mayor in 2022, because I'm not an accelerationist because I just choose not to do that. I don't know if the tactic will work or not. I haven't spent any amount of time thinking about it, and I don't intend to. But by running for mayor in 2022, the city of Keene had to have a primary. If they have more than 2 mayoral candidates, they have to run a primary. And if they don't have to have a primary. The fact that I spent $5, or maybe it was $2, to file to run for mayor in 2022, forced the city of Keene to spend $16,000 to have a primary.
Oh, that's right, because of that.
So I single-handedly made the city of Keene spend $16,000 for a primary so that I could go run for an office that I didn't actually want.
Yeah.
And that brought me joy. I'm actually tired of hearing him now, so
we're going to cut him off finally.
So, Skeeter, thank you so much
I loved
for the
him
call
like
tonight.
screaming in the back where you couldn't really hear him, but like people could hear him.
Yeah.
That was entertaining.
Yeah, that was. Thank you for the call tonight, Skeeter. Thank you for the entertainment. I'm going to end the call now. So that's probably the best way to handle Skeeter, I think. When he starts just like yelling and screaming, I'm not convinced the guy can have a normal conversation. He has certainly gotten better about the interrupting thing. Like, he's really bad about asking you a question and then immediately interrupting you as soon as you start to answer that question. And he has gotten better about that. But he still doesn't want to let you respond to anything he says. And that has to be worked out. But to his credit, I did tell him like 2 or 3 weeks ago that if you want to call in and have a conversation, we can do that. But don't just call in and yell at me. And he didn't do that this time.
Yeah.
So that's progress. Good job, Skeeter.
I think we do a good job at demonstrating. We give people a microphone who probably know. I can't imagine any other radio show would give somebody like Skeeter or James a mic.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. They would get cut off at the screening. I mean, we used to have someone who screened calls for us, and it just wasn't worth it because we took every call anyway. But like that's what they would do. They would call, "What's your topic tonight?" And okay, well, we're not going to let you on the air. Call back another.
Yeah, I mean, that was the screening. Though was more prank calls. I think it was to filter out, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but that's only because we didn't have any other standard that we wanted them to impose for us. If we were like, look, if people sound like they're crazy, we don't want to take them.
You got to make a good show still, right? Like, I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. And so, if you're entertaining, even if we're not a fan of your opinions or views, that doesn't. Yeah, you'll still end up getting on, basically.
And Skeeter was certainly entertaining. I can do without the references to killing me and raping me, though. Like, let's not do that.
That does cross a line for me. I just don't necessarily know that the response to that is necessarily the best response to that is to just cut somebody off. I mean, maybe
like
if
turning
it's
his mic down was a much better way of handling.
Yeah,
that.
I liked that, turning the mic down. That was really great because you could still hear it. I don't know if the radio listeners could hear it. I'm guessing they can, but it was just you could hear somebody like screaming in the background. That was great.
Awesome. So let's get back on topic as much as we can. You have a story that's coming to us out of Spain where they are attempting to create a filter that is going to ensure that only adults can watch pornography in Spain.
I don't think it's a filter. This is the weird part. It's a passport, and the pornographic websites are going to be required to implement it, support for it. So so
this would be all porn websites and not just Spanish ones
in their jurisdiction, because how are they going to enforce something outside? If you have a pornographic website in New Hampshire, running from New Hampshire, how does Spain enforce their jurisdiction on you? I mean, ultimately, they don't have the power to seize your bank account. They can, issue a court order to shut down, but why would you comply with it? Because there's nothing they can do. I mean, they can issue a warrant in Spain, but that warrant in Spain isn't valid in the United States.
Well, they could, if your site was big enough, they could, in theory, put pressure on the American government to do something about it. And the American government probably would.
If it's illegal here, sure. But in this case, it's very specific, and there's no equivalent here in terms of law.
So we're going to get into that story because we've seen similar things happen here in the United States and ultimately get struck down. 603-283-6160 if you want to call in, join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. The president is trying to address growing concerns within his own party about his mental fitness for the job. Biden has also sent a letter to Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday saying he's firmly committed to staying in the race. And during a phone interview with MSNBC, the president invited challenges from doubters.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites in the party who they know so much more. But any of these guys don't think I should run against me. Challenge me at the convention.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced a barrage of questions at Tuesday's briefing about multiple visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist.
NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. It's the alliance's 75th anniversary summit, starting on Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol. But it comes at a politically fraught time, with Russian attacks on Kiev and election uncertainty unfolding in several western states. FSN's Benji Hire reports.
The expanded 32-nation defence pact is vowing to pour more weapons into Ukraine for another year, yet the big prize, membership, is off the table for now. Instead, senior Biden administration officials say NATO will make other significant announcements, including, quote, new steps to bolster Ukraine's air defences. The US president is hosting an event on Thursday with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky before holding a press conference to cap the 3-day summit. Joe Biden, though, is fending off calls to quit the presidential race against his predecessor Donald Trump, who's in the past threatened to withdraw from NATO unless European countries pay their fair share.
NASA is a step closer to sending the first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation, as FSN's Sally Patterson reports.
For more than a year, a NASA crew carried out Mars mission operations from the US state of Texas. The 4 volunteers lived and worked inside a 3D printed Mars replica, where they grew vegetables, maintained their equipment and habitat, and operated under what NASA calls additional stresses a Mars crew will experience, all from the city of Houston.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, a unique take on President Joe Biden's predicament. It comes from the only man to have beaten Biden in a primary this year. Jason Palmer was considered a maverick, a venture capitalist who put his name forward for the Democratic Party's nomination in 16 states and territories, arguing that the Democrats urgently needed to pass the leadership torch to a younger generation. He lost to Biden in 15 of those races, but not in American Samoa, far off in the Pacific, where his victory was the first time any sitting president has lost a primary since Jimmy Carter in 1980.
I'm a canary in the coal mine, the fact that I won in American Samoa, but there were other canaries. Biden didn't do the Super Bowl interview, which is an incredible opportunity to speak to the American public. He's done very few, addresses to the nation on the top issues like inflation, the economy, immigration. Now, that's not to say he's not been a great president and a, incredible public servant for 50 years, but the writing has been on the wall. He even called himself a transitional president 4 years ago. I just think optimism blinds people sometimes.
Jason Palmer is joining calls for the president to abandon his re-election quest and believes the next 2 weeks will be critical in determining whether the Democrats can find their footing anew in the race against Donald Trump. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again, US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. And NASA is a step closer to sending its first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation. There's more from us on X at Feature Story. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
The nation's quadriplegics immobilized on Washington in support of stem cell research. And a Penn State t-shirt is awkwardly looked away from. And now for the weekly feature your fragile, susceptible mind already has your lips salivating for. This is The Onion Week in Review. Sources reported today that 10-year-old Brandon Thomas, who is currently homesick at his friend Kevin's sleepover, needs to just tough it the fuck out.
I don't feel like playing Xbox right now.
The pathetic little bitch who claims he just doesn't feel like eating any birthday cake or joining in any activities with his friends, frankly needs to grow a pair because his parents only live 10 minutes away, for Christ's sake. Here's what the whiny pansy had to say for himself.
I wasn't crying. It's just allergies. I want to go home.
What a f***ing wuss. In other news, a voicemail from mom is deleted 3 words in, and a man with nice eyes is blown. All right, now off with you. I can't have you seeing me like this. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, and you are invited to join us. 603-283-6160. I'd love to hear from a sovereign citizen. I realize they don't call themselves that.
Wait, they don't?
No. I guess some of them probably do, but they don't, because a citizen is someone who swears fealty to a nation in return for something that nation has granted.
Okay, so okay. What do somebody who considers themselves a sovereign citizen call themselves? Because I did not know that was like a derogatory type of.
I don't remember now. I only found out when the Spanish Moors, I think they were the Spanish Moors, did something, I think, in Rhode Island or Connecticut.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that was when Ian and I ended up having the discussion, and I referred to them as sovereign citizens, and he said that's actually not what they call themselves. And he explained it much more better than I can, because I don't fully remember the conversation. But yeah, they don't call themselves that. But we are brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. You can find official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies there. That's LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny Liberty-oriented clothing. All of that and more at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. Now, Chris, you have a story that we've been mostly just teasing and haven't really gotten into yet, and that's unfortunate because I really want to, about how Spain has decided that porn websites are going to have to verify the people viewing porn on their websites. And to me, this whole thing has been stupid since I was 12 years old and realized that, yes, I could just click that I was 18 and that would be the end of it. That to me is enough.
you don't even have to do that necessarily. It just depends on where the website is hosted, because in some places there's no laws on it. And other places there are laws on it. Some places you just have to click a button like the United States. And some places you have to, if you're hosting it from the UK, you have to have like some sort of ID and buy something, and I don't even know. And this is something, I think the Spanish thing is something similar to that, basically, to something that I think the UK already passed. But yeah, so the Spanish government has a plan to prevent kids from watching porn online. Meet the porn passport.
You know, it actually, before we get into it, it actually makes me think about how the stupid cookie nonsense that we've seen as a result of the European Union is probably making it easier for kids to watch porn, because they're so used to clicking yes and accept when they go to websites that they don't even notice that they're agreeing that they're 18 years old. They're just clicking that yes button, right, just like they do on every other website that they ever go to.
There is, from a security perspective, that is definitely, I forget what version of Windows it was, but it, like, every time you did anything, you had to like click a button to
Windows Vista, user account control.
Okay.
Hated that.
And it was the biggest security joke, because you can't have a user having to click OK to something, because they'll end up never reading it when it actually matters.
IT people tend to create exactly these problems too. And I found myself doing it back when I did IT, when I would step someone through installing something over the phone, when I would tell them, yeah, just click next through all of that. Yes, just click yes. Yes, allow. Just whatever it asks you, just say yes, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's a bad thing to tell people. That's how they end up installing 5,000 different toolbars on Internet Explorer, which that happened a lot back in the day. I can't count how many times I went to fix someone's slow browser, and it was Internet Explorer, and they had 15 toolbars installed, the Ask toolbar, the Yahoo toolbar, and they never used any of them.
I know. You know, the worst is if you when I would reinstall Windows for somebody, and this is a long time ago, guys. And it was like infected with malware of some kind, and then they would go and do the same thing that they had literally just tried to do. And obviously, I'm pretty sure obviously they were trying to like watch some sort of pornographic video probably, and it was really just a malicious file, and
like
they would just reinfect themselves. I'm like, I literally just finished like wiping your entire system yesterday, and you're calling back again to I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, but like I have to charge you again.
Yeah, like, no, people, you do not need a special codec to watch the porn on that site.
Right?
It is a virus. Do not download it.
Yeah. So officially, and Drilly called the Digital Wallet Beta, the app.
The Digital Wallet Beta? This sounds like it's going to have a central bank digital currency
Digital
rolled into
Wallet
it as well.
Beta. That's the U.S. like translated for name of it, but
I guess your wallet does also hold your ID, so maybe that's why.
Digital wallet.
Let's move forward.
Yeah, beta. I don't know. The app Madrid unveiled on Monday would allow internet platforms to check whether a prospective smut watcher is over 18. So I guess it's a plugin of some kind for like porn websites, basically. But of course, if a porn website doesn't implement the plugin because they're outside of the Spanish jurisdiction, it still doesn't stop, a young person from like going and accessing porn on the internet generally. Like this is the most, these systems that like these politicians have no understanding, or they just don't care that their system is so useless and ineffective that it's pointless to even like put the law forward or the bill forward.
Now, I happen to like pornography a whole lot, but so I'm a bit out of touch on the subject, but like, how big of a problem is it really that your kids are watching porn? First of all, why do you care? Second of all, how often is this really happening? And is it happening enough for the government to try to fix it? Why don't you fix it by taking your kid's phone away?
I'm still trying to understand this myself. Like, every 13-year-old boy is probably on the internet watching porn. Like, it's and before the internet, they were stealing their dad's Playboys or whatever, right? Like, this is, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, are you trying to say that like every male adult is like somehow messed up? Like, did it somehow harm them in some way? And if so, what exactly do you think would change as a result of something like this, if you could somehow keep it from, young adults,
well,
right?
Pornography has existed for a very long time, and people have been having sex as long as human beings have existed. And I know that because it's having sex that causes more human beings to exist. So I don't understand the demonization of sex and pornography as a whole. Sex is necessary for human beings to procreate. It's necessary for a human being's well-being as well, even if it's not done for procreation. And what is the harm in allowing little 13-year-old Jimmy to watch porn?
And honestly, like, that's going to keep him probably from like actually impregnating a girl and actually like being having some sort of problem. I
don't know
I
if
could
it will
see,
or not, but like he's curious and he's going to resolve that curiosity.
I think the argument for porn is actually way stronger than the argument against it. Just like if you look at like statistics with countries in terms of like rapes and things, rapes fall when you decriminalize pornography, and they increase when you criminalize pornography.
Do they?
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew that was true of prostitution, but I didn't know it was also true of pornography.
Yeah, it's true of porn.
Okay.
And so, this is something, I forget which country it was, but like back in the 70s, I think it was illegal, and then they legalized it. The rapes fell, and then they criminalized it again. Rapes increased, and then they decriminalized it again. Like, it was so clear. And I understand that like causation and everything, but I think the evidence is pretty strong in terms of suggesting that you're better off with it. But I can understand not wanting your daughter to be pregnant and then at a young age or something like I can understand
then
that.
have the talk with her.
But
have open lines of communication with her where you explain the importance of using protection, being on birth control, making good decisions.
But banning porn,
and
how does
having
that
raw sex with the hillbilly down the street whose parents are on meth?
Right, but how does banning porn
Well, if anything, it makes
help
kids
in that sense?
Inexperienced and unknowledgeable, which is bad for everyone around. If you want to know what a lack of experience and a lack of knowledge does to people, then look no further than Mississippi, which has the highest teen pregnancy rates in the U.S. and the highest STI rates, sexually transmitted infection rates, in the United States as well, because the only sexual education they're allowed to have in Mississippi is abstinence education, where they're like, no, you just can't have sex. That's the only sex that they're allowed to have, and it doesn't work. It leads to more pregnancies, more sexual violence, more sexually transmitted diseases. Open lines of communication, open lines of information and knowledge are important and valuable and useful, and they help people make better decisions. If I don't have kids, but if I did have my kids, I would want them to be informed and knowledgeable about experiences that they are going to have out in the real world. I wouldn't want my son or my daughter to be completely blindsided at 17 at a party when they're drunk and someone wants to have sex with them. And they're like, I don't even know what's happening right now. I feel all excited. Let's do it, right? I would want them to know the importance of. I
can't even conceive that there's actually young people out there that are that unaware.
There's not. Around the time they hit puberty, they start looking up porn online.
There's certainly a percentage of the population who wants them to be that unaware, right? And that's the thing that just kind of baffles me.
But then your kids learn about sex from pornography, which is not an improvement by much over abstinence education. Now, it is an improvement to some degree because it's just an improvement for them to learn the actual mechanics, I guess, versus not knowing them. But they're not learning anything valuable or helpful from pornography. And I know there was a law passed in California several years ago requiring pornographic actors and actresses to use protection when having intercourse in videos. However, that's not going to entice your children to wear protection, especially not when they're in the moment, they're giving into hormones. You've got to talk sense into your kids before they're in those situations, because porn isn't going to do it. And don't let porn raise your kids. And look, I'm not saying that watching porn should be a family event. When I say that let your kids watch porn, I don't mean sit down on the couch with them and be like, hey, son, come here. I want you to watch this. Right?
Right. Yeah. I think the answer to the, like, if we're gonna have a serious conversation about this, and I think we are having a pretty serious conversation right now, the way to like prevent STDs and things like that, and babies, right, is to make condoms more readily available in schools and things of that nature, because ultimately it's that availability that is going to help manage the situation, as opposed to what you're saying is it's going to happen, right? Whether no matter what you do, it's going to happen. So if they have easy access to condoms and things like that, you're much more likely to have a better outcome than not.
Yeah, but see, these people are insane, and they think that putting condoms in schools will encourage children to have sex because, teaching people how to stop, drop, and roll and putting fire extinguishers in classrooms certainly raises the amount of people catching on fire, right? Obviously, it does not. Knowing how to stop, drop, and roll in order to put yourself out of fire when you're on fire does not encourage you to catch on fire. And having access to a fire extinguisher does not make you more likely to burn a building down. Having access to condoms does not make you more likely to engage in sexual activity. It just makes it so that if you are going to engage in sexual activity, you can do it safely.
Well said. So let's read a little bit more into this, what this exactly entails. So porn viewers will be asked to use the app to verify their age. Once verified...
Hold on. So this isn't just like they're not just opening Google Chrome or the Brave browser or the AdBlock browser. Look, if you're on mobile, use the AdBlock browser. Brave is probably fine too.
I don't know. I mean, they're talking about an app. To me, it very much sounds like you have to install some sort of Android or iPhone app in order to like...
spyware.
Validate or something.
But then I guess you would have to watch the porn through this app as well, right? Or is this app communicating with your browser?
Oh, no. It gives you credits. So hold on. Let me keep reading. Once verified, they'll receive 30 generated porn credits.
Hold on. This dystopian nightmare. I have to process this. Hold on. So you verify your ID in this app, and it gives you actual porn credits.
Porn credits. I'm serious.
That you can use to watch pornography.
That's literally what this article says.
And I have to know more.
Yeah. With a 1 month period granting them access to adult content. So I guess you have to use those 30 porn credits up within the month.
Okay, but what if you need to watch more porn than that?
Oh, they have an answer for this. Enthusiasts will be able to request I love the way they phrase this too. Extra credit.
Okay.
Like, when you're in school and you're taking a test and you want extra credit at the end of the test, like there's these extra answers that you can fill out for extra credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was too busy laughing at the idea of thinking about people who watch porn as being like porn enthusiasts. Now, how do they acquire more credits? What did they do? I
don't know. It just says enthusiasts will be able to request extra credits.
So you have to request the government. So what is this, like 1 credit per hour? And like after you've watched your allotted 30 hours of porn, the government's like, no, you have to request more credits if you want to watch pornography.
Oh, the best part about this is it's the reason for the credits is it makes it more privacy friendly.
But it doesn't. It tells the government exactly how much porn you're watching.
And it regulates how much porn you can access somehow.
And does this give the Spanish government knowledge of what porn you're watching?
I would think it would have to, because it's somehow like they are logging like what you're doing based on the authentication. I mean, why else authenticate?
I don't think we need the government. Now, I realize I'm a bit of a degenerate, but I don't think we need the government to know our kinks and sexual preferences. Call me crazy, but I don't think they need to know that. I don't think it's information they need.
I'm still failing to understand what benefit this has to society for the government to know what kinks and preferences you've got in terms of...
And how much porn you watch.
Yeah, and how much porn you watch. Like, the system, I mean...
Like, if you use a VPN, then your ISP doesn't even know how much porn you watch.
This reminds me very much of the breathalyzers that are mandated to be installed in all new vehicles after some I forget what year it is, but in a couple of years, I guess they're going to mandate breathalyzers.
That's right.
In all new
I
vehicles.
heard about that.
Like, it's another problem. It's another solution to like a problem, but like, I'm not even sure there's a problem. right?
Yeah, people can always get their sober 12-year-old to breathe into it for them.
Right, which is something that was
like, that's
already
what my dad would have
been.
had me do. Like, here, breathe into this.
Yes, this is the funny thing. This is what actually happens. And you know what they do as a result of that now to prevent that from happening is you now have to, not only does your 12-year-old have to breathe into it to start the car, they have to come with you while you're drinking and driving in order to breathe into it. In the middle, while you're driving down the road, your kid has to breathe into it. And now think about this for a moment. If it's not your kid breathing into it, it's a drunk person breathing into it. Tell me that's you cannot tell me that this is making us safer. This is making us less safe because now you have a drunk person trying to breathe into some device that doesn't even work right most of the time.
While they're driving down the street.
While they're driving down the road drunk.
Now, in theory, this would happen. Like, I notice a lot of newer vehicles, they automatically turn themselves off and then reignite their engines or whatever when their light is green and they hit the gas again. I hate that feature.
Is that hybrid vehicles?
I think so.
Okay.
But I hate that feature, and I will never buy one that has that.
Hybrid, yeah.
But I would assume that this breathalyzer thing only happens in those moments. And you can't.
Currently.
Would you be going down the highway?
But they're mandating this in every new vehicle.
Right. But would you be going down the highway at like 65 miles per hour and you're like, hey, you got to breathe into this thing now?
From people who I know who've had this, and I've asked them detailed questions about it, the car will shut off on you. And then you have to like breathe in to like restart the car. And if it doesn't turn on again, like you're basically in the middle. And depending on the situation, like if you're in the highway and there's nowhere to pull over, what do?
You can also lose power steering, and your steering wheel can lock and stuff.
Yeah.
When you turn just like when
right.
Your car
That's
just
literally
off.
creating a very dangerous situation. And this is like what they're actually doing already.
You know, this reminds me of a sci-fi short story that I'm working on, not actively, it's just on the back burner, of a future of the Internet of Things where everything is connected to the Internet and everything's just constantly being hit with ransomware. The obvious result of this is that someone's vehicle is going to be hit with ransomware while they're driving down the highway. And it's going to say something like, look, pay us 0.1 Bitcoin or we're going to lock your steering wheel and you're going to crash and die.
And you know, that's the crazy thing.
But that's exactly what these breathalyzers are doing.
Well, yeah.
It's just instead of paying a Bitcoin.
Yes, and not only that, but they're also mandating vehicle-to-vehicle communications and internet connectivity basically on all new vehicles as well. So like it's guaranteed to have a situation at some point down the line where what you're saying is exactly what's going to happen. It may be, you know, and this is like, let's just assume for a moment that like there's security in this and somehow they make it like.
See, I was going to ask because as a tech person, like I'm no longer really a tech person, but I did IT for 10 years. I never was a fan of it, and I never met a single IT person who was a fan of the Internet of Things because of the security risks involved.
Yeah.
Like, I know for a fact that IT people and programmers don't take security nearly as seriously as they should. And so I was curious what your perspective on the Internet of Things was, but it sounds like it's pretty much the same as all IT people. It's like, no, we don't want this crap anywhere near us.
It's the absolutely worst thing that like it's marketing. It's literally just marketing nonsense.
Like the smart fridges. Like, oh, well, it automatically checks if I'm low on milk. So can your eyeballs.
I don't. Like I'm thinking like I'm thinking about like replacing my cars. They're getting kind of old. I have 200 something thousand miles on one of them at least, and I think it's like 230 something like that. Anyway, and I'm thinking about replacing it. It's the car I have is from 2005. It's computerized. It's got all sorts of computers all over, but it's not connected to the internet. If I buy something too new, it's going to end up being more vulnerable and more dangerous as a result. And I don't want that.
I bought a new car this year. I'm still waiting on a tow ride from Japan, but I bought a 2024 Miata.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my concerns was that it was going to have all of those, what most people would call features, I would call flaws and vulnerabilities.
Right.
But luckily, it's still at a point where it's mostly just connected to your phone, and your phone does all the internet stuff. So, I mean, there's still probably some
So
GPS
you can
stuff,
just not connect it to your phone until it tells you.
I'm going to because I like Bluetooth and map navigation and all of that.
So you're opening up a vulnerability to,
Yes, but, well, that's only because my phone is vulnerable, right? And it doesn't have the self-driving crap that any of the other Internet of Things cars have. So yes, I am exposing myself to those vulnerabilities, but I'm exposing myself to them, right? It's not just the car is exposing me to them. I'm doing it, of my own volition.
And the entertaining part of this is they're also mandating, or they're banning like gas vehicles, right?
Yeah.
Batteries? Like just this weekend, there was a huge a car fire with a battery car, right?
Yeah.
Boom. And it delayed traffic for hours.
The Miata gets a whopping 22 miles per gallon, and that's the way I like it. There's more coming up here. 603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper. US President Joe Biden has told those who think he's not fit to serve another term as president to challenge him at the Democratic Convention in August. The president is trying to address growing concerns within his own party about his mental fitness for the job. Biden has also sent a letter to Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday saying he's firmly committed to staying in the race. And during a phone interview with MSNBC, the president invited challenges from doubters.
I'm getting so frustrated by the elites in the party who they know so much more. But any of these guys don't think I should run against me. Challenge me at the convention.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced a barrage of questions at Tuesday's briefing about multiple visits by a Parkinson's expert to the White House.
If it's not in the medical report, obviously it's not something that the president is dealing with. Well, I can tell you this. Just going back to Parkinson's for a little bit, so to give you some answers here, has the president been treated for Parkinson's? No. Is he being treated for Parkinson's? No, he's not. Is he taking medication for Parkinson's? No. So those are the things that I can give you full-blown answers on, but I'm not going to confirm a specialist.
NATO allies are pledging continued support for Ukraine as leaders prepare to meet in Washington, D.C. this week. It's the alliance's 75th anniversary summit, starting on Tuesday in the U.S. Capitol. But it comes at a politically fraught time, with Russian attacks on Kiev and election uncertainty unfolding in several western states. FSN's Benji High reports.
The expanded 32-nation defence pact is vowing to pour more weapons into Ukraine for another year, yet the big prize, membership, is off the table for now. Instead, senior Biden administration officials say NATO will make other significant announcements, including, quote, new steps to bolster Ukraine's air defences. The US president is hosting an event on Thursday with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky before holding a press conference to cap the three-day summit. Joe Biden, though, is fending off calls to quit the presidential race against his predecessor Donald Trump, who's in the past threatened to withdraw from NATO unless European countries pay their fair share.
NASA is a step closer to sending the first astronauts to Mars after a crew completed a months-long simulation, as FSN's Sally Patterson reports.
For more than a year, a NASA crew carried out Mars mission operations from the US state of Texas. The 4 volunteers lived and worked inside a 3D printed Mars replica, where they grew vegetables, maintained their equipment and habitat, and operated under what NASA calls additional stresses a Mars crew will experience, all from the city of Houston.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
amps.freetalklive.com if you want to check it out. That's our Patreon. That's amps.freetalklive.com. And there you get the AMP-only version of the podcast, which doesn't actually make a big difference these days because we no longer put ads in the actual podcast, but it's designed just for you. And in the last month, there have been 2 or 3 posts that went up there on the Patreon that only our patrons, I almost said Patreons, that only our patrons can see. Plus, you get the Free Talk Cast a day before everyone else gets it. And eventually that may actually matter to people. But anyway, you do get it a day early, and there's some other cool little features and benefits. But you should join because you want to support the show and not for any of the little perks that we occasionally forget about and that we occasionally forget to do. Join because you love Free Talk Live and you want to show your love and support. The best way to do that is the AMPS program. That's amps.freetalklive.com. And because of that, I want to say thank you to Daniel Krafzig, who is tonight's amplifier. Daniel is a gold level amplifier, which means that Daniel is giving $10 per month to the AMPS program. We don't ask that, of course. All we ask is $5 per month. That gets you in, and that gets you access to the early podcast and some other cool perks. But again, we don't ask that. $5 per month is all it takes. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Thank you, Daniel, for your contributions. We hope you're enjoying the content. But let's keep going with the phones because we are a call-in show. Before we get too much further into this wacky article that allows you to have porn credits that allow you to watch certain amounts of porn, we have Creighton on the line with us from Kentucky. Creighton, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I wanted to talk about that porn app.
Yeah.
And before I mention that, even though causation is not correlation is not causation. You mentioned before that the incidence of rapes go down in a society that permits porn, but that's not the only effect that's noteworthy. The happiness within a marriage also goes down and contributes to broken families. You're more likely to have a child grow up in a single parent home that way. But that's not really important.
Is that
not why I called?
I suppose that's going to depend a lot on the relationship. A lot of marriages end badly, and I don't know that it's fair to put the responsibility for that on pornography. When I was married, I had a very happy marriage, and it was only because I needed to transition that we ended the relationship, and I needed to go my separate ways.
I'm not saying it's the cause of.
Yeah, I understand.
What I'm saying is that it's more likely to lead to it.
But I don't think it's I don't think it's more likely to lead to it either. And like I was saying, I had a very happy marriage. It was only because I needed to transition and move on and do other things that my marriage ended up ending. But we watched a fair bit of porn together, and it made our sex life healthier and more varied.
Well, I was specifically referring to access for young boys in the 13 to 16 age range. Growing up and having unrealistic expectations of a healthy sexual relationship. What I'm saying is there are counterbalances to those statistics worth mentioning. But I'm actually calling because the way you're describing this app, it sounds to me like it is a digital modern version of a government vice permit.
Well, yeah, that's literally what it is.
Yeah, it's just like China's social credit system, basically, except for porn.
But I want to go back to what you said because I'm not convinced that any 13 to 16-year-old boy or anyone of any age is really setting their expectations of what to expect from sex based on pornography.
The word that I think I disagree with is unhealthy. I don't know why it would be
whether it's healthy or unhealthy.
Like, okay, even
when I watched porn as a kid, I knew that wasn't what I was going to get out of sex with a girl. I knew it wasn't going to play out the way that it does in pornography, right? I just knew that. Just like I know that if I were to put on a cape and try to fly off my roof, I wouldn't fly like Superman.
Even if you don't, okay, so you have an expectation and it doesn't meet what you expected it. Okay. So what?
Well, the intelligent among us would realize very quickly that is fantasy and move on. But we both know that the intelligent among us become libertarians anyway, and most people are not. So there you have it. I mean, there's plenty of people in our society that get stuck with an image in their head. And the image that I'm referring to, the unhealthy part, is that the partner that you end up with, even though in real life they're beautiful people, they're not the kind of beautiful people that would look good naked. That is disruptive.
In that case, it's definitely not fair to blame porn. You got to blame Snapchat and its filters, Instagram and its filters, Photoshop, and all these other things, right? I mean, because the person, the girl that you end up dating is not going to look like her Instagram pics or how she looks. I dated this one girl who every picture she took of herself, she put through an obscene amount of Snapchat filters, and it was obvious she did this, and she was still pretty regardless. But like, girl, why are you doing this to your appearance? It's not a good look. But if a person doesn't realize that there's that disconnect between the internet and real life, then
they have mental health issues.
Yeah, that's not an issue with porn.
That predates any of that, I think.
Right, but it's not porn's fault or Instagram's fault.
You can look at the statistics. Instagram as well. Any of the social media contributes to this problem we have today. The current generation, the Gen A, Generation Alpha, the teenagers today are the most diagnosable generation in human history.
It's because we baby them to death.
Well, it's also because they have the internet shoved at them from the moment they're born and they're raised on the internet, and they lose sight of the fact that the internet isn't real life. And there's a lot of libertarians who are like that as well, who thinks that, what happens on Twitter is real life. It's just something that people do. The more they use the internet, the more it becomes their version of reality.
And here's the thing I always want to point out. People have choices. Nobody's forcing you to use Facebook. Nobody's forcing you to use Twitter. Nobody's forcing you to use any of these things. These are things you are opting into. There are other things that you can choose to do. And the fact that people are not choosing to do them, well, that's on them. That's not on me. I don't choose to do those things. I have never been on Facebook. I've never been on Twitter. I've never been on any of these platforms. And it's not ever. And I mean, I don't have an account on any of them.
I understand,
right? I've clicked on a link to Facebook or whatever, probably at some point, and whatever. Anyway, point is, I've never been on any of these platforms. And it's not like these platforms, when I was in college, these platforms came into Facebook, for example, came into being.
Yeah.
I didn't get on it. I chose not to get on it, right? There are people out there that are not on Facebook. There's other people out there, or they might be on Facebook, but they're also on other platforms. So it's not like you're stuck on using these platforms. You have a choice, just like you have a choice of whether you want to watch 3 hours of television tonight, or you want to play a game, or, go to a movie, or, go on a date. You have choices.
That is true. But I was referring to the overall statistics that you referred to, which also do indicate that marriages are less likely to survive. That was literally all I was pointing out. But I want to circle back about the app itself being a permit, a government permit. And my suspicion is that even if it's not true now, in the future, if they succeed in getting any significant majority of the Spanish population to participate in this, in the future, there's going to be a tax in there somehow. This is basically like the alcohol tax for the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or trying to social credit system as well. It's very similar to this.
Yeah, you haven't been good enough. You haven't earned enough. You haven't posted enough pro-government things on Twitter this month. You don't get your extra credits.
You can't take the train because you don't have enough social credit to take the train.
Well, yeah, but right now in Spain, at least, it's just porn.
It is, but actually, if I continue on with this article,
Thank you so much for the call tonight, Creighton. We are going to continue on with this article, and you make a number of really good points. I'm still not convinced that porn is in any way responsible for failing marriages, but I understand that I have not looked into it at all.
No, I think it's just an excuse as opposed to the cause, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so this
I will say Facebook has probably destroyed more marriages than pornography.
Yeah, the internet in as a general thing.
Well, Facebook specifically, because it leads to so many affairs.
I don't even know that you can really blame the internet. I mean, I think it's more of a human nature kind of situation.
Yeah, Facebook
right?
just gives them the opportunity to do something.
Right.
It's
you know?
because humans aren't naturally monogamous, and yet we continually force ourselves to try to be, and the result is divorce and cheating.
And honestly, it's I don't want to say just Western societies, but like a lot of it, it's not been like, if you look at different societies around the world over the course of human history, it's not been completely monogamous. That's something that's sort of been brainwashed into us through at least Western and maybe Middle Eastern religions. Because if you look at like, Native Americans and other groups and other populations, it wasn't this monogamy. It wasn't that, right?
Hold on before we get further into the article, though, because we have another caller. We have David on the line from New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, questions on crypto that I've never heard discussed before. But one, I can't imagine getting into an affair with anybody I've ever met or seen on Facebook. And here's an interesting thing, at least it is to me. There was a dude that used to pay me to he wanted to go out and drink, and he wanted to drive around in his own car because he had invested a lot in his car. And so he would pay me when he got a DUI. He would pay me to drive him around in his car to go, bar hopping and whatever. And so that exists. And then I think you guys forgot the existence of the interlock camera that takes a picture of the face blowing into the interlock.
I did indeed. I didn't know such a thing existed. I've never had a breathalyzer.
So there may be newer technology that I am unaware of as well. Most of what I am aware of is probably a bit dated at this point, like by a decade or so.
The only time I've ever blown into a breathalyzer was in prison at the outbreak of COVID-19 there. When they were like, hey,
I've never personally
sick,
used one myself.
So let's take this thing around and make everyone blow
if you want to
into
give us a description of how they work, or maybe more recent ones work, feel free.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, knowing that it takes a picture of your photo, it takes a picture of your face, that does seem at least to help mitigate some of the other people breathing into your breathalyzer for you.
Well, the question is, does it cause any other issues, though?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Like, does it actually accurately take a picture of your face, or does
remember
it
the vaccine
changes in
passes?
your face?
The one out of New York would accept just about anything that you submitted as proof of your vaccine. Some people were sending restaurant menus and stuff, and the vaccine passport was like, yep, this checks out.
I could definitely see it not working for people of color, and I can also see it not working for working as intended, in that, a child may have a very similar feature set as you, being a parent or something like that, or a brother or a cousin or something like that.
And you raise an important issue, which is that people of color, black people in particular, they
all look alike, man.
No, they don't. But facial recognition technology and like the automatic. No, it's not. That's not at all what we said.
With you.
The automatic hand washing things that sense movement and detect it, they really struggle with darker complexions, to the extent that usually they won't turn on. Like the automatic paper towel thing that's supposed to, or the automatic air dryer, they frequently won't turn on for people of color.
Wow, I did not know that.
What you're saying is when I do my next bank robbery, I should be putting a shoe polish all over my face to mess up the facial recognition for the FBI?
That's probably a really good way to get shot by bystanders instead of police officers.
So the bystanders are more likely to shoot the black guy or the white guy with shoe polish on his face? What are you saying?
I'm saying that bystanders are more likely to shoot someone for wearing blackface than they are in other circumstances.
There you go.
Yeah.
So they're the most bystanders are politically correct, is what you're saying.
I don't think it's a matter of political correctness. It's
Liberal?
a matter of this is not a thing that a good moral human being would do.
Wouldn't that be politically incorrect?
Don't they know the non-aggression principle? Isn't that against the non-aggression principle?
David, you were talking about robbing a bank. Don't bring the non-aggression principle next. You can't do that.
Well, maybe I was non-violent. I mean, putting shoe polish on your face isn't violent. I didn't say I had a gun.
You said you were robbing a bank.
Well,
that's an act of aggression.
Robbing a bank. You walk into the bank and you say, "Give me the money." That's robbing a bank.
That's theft. It's an act of aggression.
No, that's robbing a bank. Ask the FBI. And I'm not talking about the full-blooded Indians. I'm talking about the actual real FBI.
And look, I hate banks as much as the next person, and I'm not going to ever say, "No, don't rob that bank. That would be terrible." However, stealing is an act of aggression.
Well, isn't turnabout fair play anyway? I mean, doesn't that cancel out the non-aggression principle? I mean, if the bank robs you and then you rob the bank, aren't you even?
Morally, maybe, but it's not just a matter of morality when it comes to these situations. I actually used to say
Why
that,
not?
you know, prior to 2020, you put on a mask to rob a bank. But after 2020, you put on a mask so the bank could rob you. Because that was the height of COVID-19. And, you know, going into a bank, you are being robbed by that bank. But yeah, I'm not going to get into this conversation about whether or not it's moral to steal from banks. I would recommend against it.
It's a bad idea either way, right? Yeah.
Okay, well, what I called about anyway is you guys talk about crypto all the time. I've never heard anyone ever on Free Talk Live ever talk about crypto brokerage accounts where you use leverage instead of just buying the units one by one, you know, and holding them or buying them and selling them or whatever. I never heard anybody talk about using leverage. What about that?
What do you mean by using leverage?
I mean, he's talking about like investing in crypto. I mean, I think ultimately what it comes down to is we don't generally advocate people invest in crypto. We advocate people use it as a currency as it was originally intended.
It's not investing. It's not investing. Actually, if you're using leverage, you're trading. You're not investing.
Yeah.
So you're not keeping it.
So do you mean like trading in like leveraging your house for cryptocurrency? Is that what you mean?
No. Like you get a brokerage account and you put in your money into that brokerage account, and then you receive margin credit, and then you can, you know, you're essentially placing a bet whether the crypto
investing.
Crypto that you're, pardon?
Yeah, you're talking about investing.
Why not just buy the crypto?
No, Chris, you're wrong. Investing is buying and holding it, and trading, you could buy it 1 minute and literally 5 minutes later sell it and make, you know, $10,000.
How is that not investing?
Because you're not keeping it, you're not holding it. You don't care if it goes up. In fact, you can make money if it goes down.
Yeah, that's investing.
And that, David?
No, it's not investing. It's trading.
Whether it's investing or not,
Okay,
it's
trading.
It's
fine.
irrelevant what it is.
You're still making money off it.
Yeah. That is exactly why Free Talk Live hosts and people on Free Talk Live will never advocate that, because you specifically said you don't hold the crypto. That's counter to everything we've ever said.
You do hold it. You do hold it for the period of time that you have paid, because you're paying your own money.
In which case, just buy your own crypto.
No, I don't even think you are, David, because you're talking about using an account that's like, it's more like an IOU you're talking about on a, like, on an exchange of some kind. It's not even an exchange. It's a government, like, even more regulated exchange than the exchanges we've got, crypto exchanges we've got. So I don't think so.
No, actually, I think they're probably less regulated than banks. But the point, that's not the point.
But you're not holding the crypto, David. Somebody else is holding your crypto at best.
The point
it's
is,
more like an IOU.
If you want to buy crypto, just buy crypto.
You have a contract. You have a contract with that brokerage account.
Why?
And when
that's all great.
When you put you're using your money, you know, you say, okay, I'm gonna.
That's all well and good, David. But why bother with the brokerage account? Why not just buy the crypto yourself instead of going through this third party and getting them to buy the crypto
I understand
for
why.
you?
I understand why he's going down that route. It's because it's like you can make more money that way. Is basically what it comes down to. But it's completely pointless. It's irrelevant because you don't actually have the crypto.
He said you can make money whether it goes up or down. So there's more going on here than whether or not Bitcoin just goes up. But you can also make more money if you had bought Bitcoin back when it was $1 per, and whereas now it's like $55,000 per. If you had done this weird little leveraging thing, I don't think you would have multiplied your profits by 55,000%. Versus if you had bought that Bitcoin, you would have. So I'm not seeing any reason, and I'm not going to turn David's microphone back up because he has not stopped talking this entire time. I'm not seeing any benefit or any gain versus just buying your own cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, see, I think there
I
might
ended up
be
just muting him.
If you're an investor type, like I kind of understand where there may be a benefit here with what David is saying, but I think from a libertarian perspective, the benefit is not in the making money aspect, it's in the use of it as a currency. So you are in control of your own money as opposed to your bank being in control of your money or the government being in control of your money. When you put your money in a bank, it's not your money, it's the bank's money. And if they lose it and assuming they don't go bankrupt, well, you're out that money. However, it's lost. It's only guaranteed if the bank goes under. Just as an example, if the government wants to take that money, like through some sort of forfeiture.
Well, the United Kingdom
they can do
allows
that.
them to.
You can't do that with the crypto in
the
your
United
own wallet.
Kingdom, after the 2007 recession, they passed a law that allows them to just reach into anyone's bank account and take up to, I believe, 25% of the funds that are in there to just have for themselves.
And I think some people don't really understand that, the government can do this in that.
Well, not every government can. The UK government specifically gave themselves permission to do that. So if you have
every government can, it's whether or not they have. And so
the United States government does not have the ability to simply reach in and take 25% of the money out of your account.
Well,
they just don't. They can
okay.
they can go through civil asset forfeiture and they can do it that way. But that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We're talking about how the United Kingdom's government
so you're talking about
recession, they can just go
at scale, basically.
Yeah, but
across the whole
presumably
population.
They could do it to individuals as well, where they can say, you got a lot of money. We're going to have some of
the problem is what a government can do versus what they're currently doing. And right now, we haven't seen that in the United States.
Well, it's also a matter of what they can actually do and what they can legally do. Like, yes, the U.S. government absolutely has the technological and power capabilities to just take all the money out of your bank account, but they don't have the legal authority to. In the
the moment until the next recession.
That's an important thing,
Yeah.
right? But in the United Kingdom, they do have that legal authority.
And the thing is, people also have to remember that, Greece, they didn't have that authority until they gave themselves that authority. There's nothing
Also
stopping
true.
the U.S. from giving themselves the authority to do the same thing Greece did when it took money out of people's bank accounts, like across the board. The United States led the way in taking money from people, and then was it Justin Trudeau in the truckers protest? Did it right?
Yep.
But most of us in the United States haven't experienced it. Most of the people in Canada haven't experienced it, except they did. When those people that went to the protest, right?
And you're 100% right that cryptocurrency can protect you against that because the government cannot, unless your account's on Coinbase or Kraken or Binance. But if you have a self-custody wallet like Coinami or Edge or I can't think of any other, or Cake Wallet, whatever, then the government cannot just reach in and take out any of your money.
And that's not to say they can't necessarily get to it if they seize your phone or something like that and you take no precautions. It's just saying that it's a lot harder for them to take something from you if you physically possess it, right? If they have to raid your house and physically take it from you, that's a lot more effort on their part, and they can't do that en masse. They can only do they can easily do that en masse when it comes to your bank account, but they can't do that en masse when it comes to
it comes right back to that very same argument that all of the encryption and all of the master 40-character passwords in the world won't protect you from someone going to Home Depot and buying a $40 wrench that's 3 feet long and beating you with it until you give them your password, right? Your password complexity doesn't really matter. Everything that you do to protect yourself doesn't really matter when someone's beating you with something, and giving them the information they want is the only way to make them stop. And that's sort of the same thing with crypto here. Yes, it protects you, but if the government comes at you and they start, putting your thumbs in the thumb screw, you're going to give them your password.
Yeah, probably. It's probably.
I think it's probably a safe bet, and I wouldn't hold it against anyone for doing so. Torture breaks people. It's designed to break people.
Yep.
Luckily, the USSR did that, but luckily, to my knowledge, at least, the United States isn't doing that, at least to its own citizens. Maybe, at least on American soil. I want to be able to say that. Why can't I say that the U.S. government isn't torturing people? And the answer is because it is. And we know it is.
Yep.
And there's nothing moral or acceptable about that. I hate to end on that note. We're out of time, though, so check us out online in the meantime at freetalklive.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Forkfest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Forkfest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel